exhumed from the vast 800-acre Shakahola forest in Kilifi. Onyancha also confirmed that the number of DNA samples taken from relatives looking for their missing persons is still 93. She said those arrested are still 35, while followers rescued remain to be 95. And Nuruddin Haji now awaits to be sworn in as the next Director General of the National Intelligence Service following unanimous approval by MPs. The National Assembly approved his nomination following a report tabled by the House Defence Intelligence and Foreign Affairs Committee that gave a nod for his approval following his vetting.
2. The nominee complies with the Section 81B of the National Intelligence Service Act, whereby he meets all the requirements pertaining to the appointment of the office of the Director General. That the nominee has held the following positions and in total has had a career spanning over 18 years in the public service, most of it having been performed at the National Intelligence Service at senior levels. Honorable Speaker, the nominee has not been charged in any court of law, and therefore this also informed us on his suitability.
In their report, the Nelson Koech-led committee exuded confidence that Haji is suitable to take the helm of the National Intelligence Service following his vast experience and capabilities.
The nominee does not hold any office in a political party, and that also was a requirement of the schedule to the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approvals Act. Honorable Speaker, during the approval hearing, the nominee demonstrated knowledge of topical, administrative, and technical issues touching on the government and has thus the requisite abilities, qualifications, and experience to serve as the Director General of the National Intelligence Service.
The legislators urged Haji to ensure that he safeguards the lives and properties of Kenyans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support, and I can see that the officer that has been nominated for this job is a distinguished officer, Mr. Speaker, who has served in the service very well, who has an exemplary career, Mr. Speaker, in the service. And Mr. Speaker, I think is one appointment that is going to move this country forward, Mr. Speaker, and this should be an example of all appointments that will be brought to this office, to this House, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, and I also rise to support one who has served the office that he has served in as DPP with unmatched integrity, Honorable Speaker.
And President William Ruto has told Azimio leaders that the outlawed Mungiki group will not be allowed to operate in Kenya. Speaking in Kirinyaga County, the head of state accused the opposition of using the outlawed group to advance its agenda. He urged them to instead engage Kenyans on issues affecting them.
Hatuwezi kuruhusu vikundi haramu. I want to say, na nataka niseme, wale viongozi wetu wa upinzani wanajaribu kutueleza ya kwamba wanataka ati warudishe Mungiki, ati wakuje waanze mambo ya bangi, ati wakuje waanze kutoa wananchi ushuru isiyo halali, ati wakuje waangaishe kina mama wetu. Mimi nataka niwaambie wale viongozi wa upinzani, please, good people, kama mnafikiri hii Mungiki ni kitu ya maana sana, pelekeni watoto wenu kwa mambo ya Mungiki. Wachana na watoto wa taifa letu la Kenya.
He continued by saying that those who are seeking to join in such activities and resurrect such groups, use them for political gain, should instead meet with them to make plans for the growth of the nation.
Tumekubaliana na watu wa Nakada ya kwamba we are going to review all the legislation to make sure that illicit drinks, mambo ya ethanol, mambo ya vinywaji yenye iko na sumu lazima tuikomeshe. Na watu wa provincial administration, wewe kama chief, wewe kama mzee ya nyumba 10, hauwezi kuwa mahali pale watoto ndio hawa wanalala kwa mtaro, wengine wanaangaishwa na madawa ya kulevya, na wewe uko pale kama kiongozi. We have to work together.
This as the government has shut down at least 5,995 liquor joints as the war against illicit brews intensifies. The Ministry of Interior and National Administration said in a statement that the facilities were closed down due to what it described as serious safety breaches and failure to fully comply with essential legal requirements. This is News. I'm Dennis Sassetta. Good morning.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
Congratulations. You've seen the hand of the Lord.
Thank you very much. I've earned another title today, this morning at Spice FM. Mama Justice, I don't mind it.
Joel in Kericho.
Salama sana Heri, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama bwana, mambo namna gani?
Salama kabisa bro.
Mambo ya Inamoi kuliendaje?
Mambo ya Inamoi, vile nilikwambia ndugu yangu, alienda asubuhi na ile gari ya kwanza.
I must have missed it.
So did I.
Even if somebody was to render you irrelevant, there is still work you can do.
Okay, sawa.
I deserve to keep you accountable. You deserve to give me a report. You don't work for me. No, I don't work for you. You work for me.
Do you like that Freudian slip? Lovely, isn't it? Thank you very much.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Thank you very much, Eric, and it's good to be at the Situation Room.
Always a pleasure coming here. This is the most challenging interview panel in Kenya. You guys are very well informed, and as you can see, Charles today, very philosophical.
To be poor in this country is the greatest sin you can commit, not just from a legal perspective, but from life generally. It is very, very skewed.
We've just heard on the floor of Parliament, just most recently, a leader within the ODM saying that sisi ni ng'ombe za baba.
Yeah.
Which means that you are willing to be milked dry.
You cannot force me to believe. I'll give way. If it's land that I'm told to return to you, I will. Okay? Because the court has said so. But I'll continue saying, watu wamenirusha. That's all that I'm doing.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
If you go out of this country and come back the same person, then you have a problem. Buy land, 1 million. Put it there for 5 years. What's the purpose?
It'll have increased in value.
No, that's the thing. That's darkness. That's an eclipse. You don't do that.
I hope you don't believe that a hustler is a poor person, or that all hustlers are poor. I've seen that conversation.
Tell us, who is that? So who is a hustler?
Hustler is a person who is making a living through hard work.
Corruption in Kenya is a political accusation. The people who are actually corrupt are not pointed fingers at.
Kenya is not free. Kenya imeshikwa na mateka. It's under siege.
Have you seen that lodge on Nyeri Road? Very high fence. You can't even
Windows
sleep inside.
up near the ceiling.
Yes. And if you walk there at midnight, you see bats the size of cows.
And when it rains, it doesn't rain on that building.
Yes.
When you're at All Saints and it's raining, it doesn't rain on that building.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Three, two.
Everybody, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Eric Latifa, Muga, Madam Du, nimesalamia wote sana.
Tumepokea salamu, asante sana.
Hapa Garissa today the weather is very good, only that baridi inatupeleka mbio sana.
Baridi ni degree ngapi hapo?
Hata sijui, lakini madam tunakauka sana.
If you want to follow the money trail, you've got to think like a thief to be able to catch that thief.
A slap from a friend is better than a kiss from an enemy. You remember the kiss of Judas Iscariot? Iscariot.
Yes.
He's the one that imetuweka kwa hii mashida yote na mataabu kwa sababu of that kiss. Yet the slap of Jesus Christ when he slapped those guys wenye walikuwa wanauza mboga ndani ya kanisa took them to heaven.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, in the middle of the weekend. What does it look like on these streets?
Njoroge Road always wakes up even before the traffic starts to do the thing. And so we're seeing a little bit of that coming into the city this morning. Landis Road, not too crazy right about now, but we're guaranteed that it'll get that way. On the Thika Superhighway, what we're seeing is just going towards Pangani is where the action is happening. And if you're looking at Waiyaki Way, coming out of Westlands, if you're looking at James Gishuru, all pretty free right about now. Nobody seems to be up and at 'em just yet, but we'll be here for when it does happen, about half hour or so. Let's take a look and see how things are opening up. Let's talk on Spice FM KE on Twitter and keep things moving this Wednesday.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
Oh, yeah. Okay. How you doing? It's Wednesday. It's the 14th of June. It's 2023. The Situation Room begins now. Good morning, City.
Good morning, Eric.
Otherwise,
the cold weather has somewhat abated. It's not as cold as it was those other weeks. No, it isn't. It's this room of ours that is cold.
Yeah, it's this room, kawaida.
Freezing.
People who just don't get it.
Mount freezing.
Just don't get it. Ndu.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Mambo vipi?
Mambo poa sana.
It's good.
Nico,
Uko bien?
Nico bien, merci. Ouais.
Pia mimi niko bien.
Uko bien, merci?
Yeah.
Ouais.
Nashukuru. Mimi? Nashukuru.
Kila kitu iliingia vile ilikuwa nafaa kuingia jana.
Wapi?
Oh no. What happened? Vitu zikakunywa maji.
What are you talking about?
Okay. Sorry.
Anyway, karibu sana to you and everybody.
Me and everybody are very grateful.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. All right. On this Wednesday, we'll have several conversations. Yesterday, the Finance and Planning Committee of the National Assembly tabled a report in which they're proposing some amendments to the finance bill. A couple of things. Kuria Kimani, the chairman of the committee, said this thing of housing fund, we are recommending that instead of 3%, we come down to 1.5%. Maybe that will make it a bit more palatable. This thing of creators, content creators, we are recommending that we come from 15% tax to 5%. This thing of turnover tax, which was going to begin at 500,000 shillings and going all the way, let's make it 1 million to about 15 million, maybe a bit better. This thing of fuel, instead of charging 8%, we agree with the recommendation that it goes to 16% VAT so that the government can make some money. Where? To understand all those things, because they're just numbers and numbers and numbers, we'll be joined by Dr. Abraham Rugo from the International Budget Partners at 7 to look at that report. 8 o'clock. Making home ownership more accessible, and it's about housing and opportunities that are there. There's Mivida Homes, and the chief executive officer of Mivida Homes is called Samuel Karaoke. Sam will be joining us at 8 a.m.
Bless you. Pole.
Asante for that discussion. Okay? Okay. Very good. So these and more conversations happening today. Wohoro Ndoho, he's a former head of the, what's it called? The Debt Management Office at the National Treasury. He'll be joining us at 9. We've been having these conversations. Okiya Mtata is saying he'll be going to court soon to have an audit of our debt. Jimmy Wanjege has been saying the same thing. We have a debt, how about we just default maramoja and we sort this thing out. Horror comes at 9. I'm about to cough again.
Take a break.
So let's just say that's what's happening. Sawa?
All right.
You think you can guess the year?
2007. That's when the theme song, that's when it premiered for the James Bond movies.
You're half correct. But in terms of guessing the year?
Okay, if not 2007, then 1963.
Oh, now you're just throwing things, eh? You're throwing the sufria and everything outside.
The Spice Drive. Big hair and the biggest hits from the best decade.
Tune in to the Spice Drive with me.
Nairobi, highs of 25 and lows of 14. It's 16 and mostly cloudy in Nakuru, highs of 26 and lows of 15 today. 14 will be the low in a cloudy. Nyeri at 15 going to highs of 24, and it's cloudy at 13 in Eldoret, highs of 22. 22 and mostly clear in Mombasa, highs of 30 today and lows of 22, and we'll see lows of 25. In a mostly clear Malindi, going to highs of 30 today. Into Kisumu, we'll see highs of 27, partly sunny is what it looked like when the sun does come up throughout today. Mostly cloudy for now at 19. All right, looking into Kakamega, it's cloudy at 16, highs of 26 and lows of 16, and 19 and cloudy in Kampala, highs of 27. 30 will be the high in Dar es Salaam, where it's cloudy at 22. It's 5 degrees and clear in Johannesburg, highs of 18, and we'll see highs of 13 and mostly clear Lagos at 27. 24 is what it is, and mostly cloudy in Kinshasa, highs of 30. It's a go to highs of 35 in a sunny Beijing this afternoon. It's cloudy at 16 in Paris and cloudy at 14 in London. 19 on Tuesday night in New York, highs of 26 and lows of 17.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
Okay, well tuned in. Kimilili Amos Freeman says good morning. Ude, you guys go wake up so early. I see what you're trying to do. Kevin Keegan, good morning. Omo, I'm going to wake up at 8 a.m. All right, well, I guess you're already awake to tell us that. Let's see what it turns out to be. Ben Orenge is tuned in from Ongata Rongai. Locked, he says, we are up. Good morning. Collins Kipsat says, happy Wednesday of the week. Always you are top notch and can't stop listening. Awesome sauce. Awesome stuff. Karibuni sana. Present Kiganjo Nyeri with Elijah Wakimani. That is Shiro, tuned in this morning. Jose says, good morning. CT, Eric and Ndu, tuned in from Homa Bay. Good morning, sunshine. Safu. Okay. Sunshine. Good morning to you too. Following from Milimani in Kitale, that's Joseph Kimnyango. Zablon Ahfala says, good morning from Spring Valley. And Roy Dennis says, good morning and have a lovely day to you too. Nakuru, still again in Bangi area. City, have you found out where Bangi is? No. Not yet? Okay. He says now it's in Nakuru Town West, near Mlima Ugali. Does that help you in any way?
Help.
I will take that as a no. Maurice Lagat says good morning. Tune in from Thika. Wexney is tuned in. Jumbo and team biggest conversation. The situation room. Your head are locked to Faculty of Information. Hadi Tamati. Edna waving from wherever you are. Mumbi, good morning. CT Muga, Eric Latif, Ndu. Ndu does not have an H at the end. Getting you loud and clear from Thika Makongeni, Dorcas Mash, Tupo Sites, Eldoret, locked in with Kaka Francis. Now Wakilisha Secondary. Okay. People in Tanzania are awake this morning and listening, and we see all of y'all. Okay, folks on YouTube also here. Alex Vunde is listening in. Zachary Ondio says tuned in from Alego in Siaya. Good morning, CT, Eric, Ndu, and Mumbi. Have a great day ahead. Davis is tuning from Minneapolis. Las Vegas in Nevada is where Jacob is this morning. And Paul Wanjo, he says, good morning, three of you. I'm spiced up after listening. We see you, Moniz, Harrison, Koskei, Julius, Rose, Chris, and Tadeo Tusabe from Dubai. Good morning, everybody. Karibu sana.
Karibu Kilamutu City.
Yes. We are still in the country of Zambia. Do not start a fight just because your companion is strong.
No, surely.
Companion.
Mchezee bwana, wajua
in my head it was opponent. I was like, huh?
Yes.
Niko na nani hapa hivi.
Wanaona hivi tu.
Jaribu.
Yes.
Shock on you. Chile.
Ndio to get on matope iko nazo.
Yeah.
All right.
Do not start a fight
just because your companion is strong.
Yeah. So that's a good one. Something is happening. Over the weekend, there was a fire at Toy Market.
Yes.
There was.
Right.
This morning, since 4 a.m., there's a fire at Mutindo Market in Buruburu.
Again. What's up?
Mutindo Market, Buruburu, is on fire. And people are saying many stalls affected.
You know, it's like a merry-go-round.
Yeah.
Kikomba Market has burnt down so many times, I actually lost count.
I don't even know how many times it's been now.
But the thing that one doesn't lose count of are the losses that the individuals who had businesses they have made over time. Every once in a while you come across someone and they tell you the story of how, yes, they had a stall, they had a business, Kikomba, when this fire came about. And somehow the explanation is that it was an electric fault.
Yeah.
Really?
Electric.
So if that is the case, then we should be very afraid of anything.
Electric.
Yes. Like I will not mention, but I will mention electric or perhaps electric.
One more time for good measure.
Imagine. It's well. Anyway, we'll see. Seto will be giving us updates on that throughout the morning. So let's look at the headlines.
All right. On the front. Hey, CT, did your guy do like that? No, I'm okay. I'm just asking.
The Business
if you're
Daily
okay.
guy.
You know, you are not going to believe what I did.
No.
You're in the same batch. I took 2 nation newspapers instead of taking one Business Daily.
You took or he gave you?
See, they're there.
So you were just picking them?
I picked 2.
So you picked Nation twice?
I picked Nation twice, thinking I'd picked
The Business Daily.
Okay.
Usijali.
Baptism by fire for Ruto's money man is what is on the front page of the Standard today. There's also a delightful picture there of athletics star and world record holder 2 times over in 7 days, Faith Kipyegon, and her daughter Alina at State House, Nairobi. She broke the 1,500 meters and 5,000 meter world records in a span of 1 week. She got 5 million shillings in cash and a 6 million shilling house, with the promise of President Ruto for any athlete who will break a world record, 5 million shillings. Pah!
Cash. Break it twice. Get paid twice.
So Faith got 10.
No, she got 5.
She got 5. Instead of the second one, she got a house worth 6 million.
Okay.
So now moving forward, any world record you break, because you know the land we have now and the houses are for housing, can't just be giving them anyhow. So 5 million.
Actually, we can now that we have them. Go on.
Okay.
It's 5 million.
Yeah, it's 5 million.
You break the record.
Yes.
In athletics.
Well, I guess anything. Well, I don't know. Anything really. You put the name of Kenya on the
Well, you can't break a record in football.
You can't break a record in football. You could in swimming.
You can. You can.
So, The shock of 200,000 students surviving on others' money. It's a special report in the Standard today. It's very interesting, and look at details of that in terms of what's going on. Why Ruto Ryla duel could save Siaya's Oduo. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see about that. Kega's Jubilee faction pulls out of Azimio. Surprise, surprise. And goes where? We'll give you the details of that. There's a picture of Nurdin Haji with his hand around his neck as though it were a noose. And the headline there is Haji just a step from becoming next top spy. That picture is very interesting for me because I saw it, I was like, perfectly placed. Why the super rich are fleeing Kenya is the front headline on The Nation. Ruto opens battlefront with Raila over Mungiki. And there's elusive justice, is what we're being called. Julie Ward's parents die days apart in the UK. Of course, remember the story of Julie Ward and what happened with her. Scotland Yard was brought into the country. They couldn't quite crack that case. Her parents were really adamant that they found out what happened to their daughter.
Wow.
Didn't happen.
Imagine. Wow. And now they're gone.
Yeah. That's what I have.
That's what you have? There's an interesting one. There's a headline that is in the Standard there. That's a story on page 8. Neighborhood watch is invasion of privacy. Why your neighbor must consent before you install CCTV
in
cameras
your own house.
At the gate, to your gate of looking at you, the door, the main road. My friend, we'll look at that story in detail. City, The Star.
Headline, top.
Big one.
Yes. In that green color, called teal. Okay. Impeachment. Raila Ruto was likely to save Orengo Deputy Oduol in Senate. Stories on page 8. And it narrates how Kenya Kwanza senators who are 38 in number versus and against the Azimio senators who are 29 are gearing up to do what? To frustrate this particular motion. We will wait and see, won't we?
We shall.
Right. Bang in the middle of the paper. Tussle details show government risks paying interest penalties. Suppliers agony as pending bills hit. Wait for it. 700 billion. Come on. Yes. 700 billion.
Is what now?
Pending bills, my friend. There were 640 billion 2.5 weeks ago.
So now this is what? Penalties plus interest?
In fact, 641 billion to be exact.
All right. Let me just now mention what
this figure is just a figure that cares. It's just
Yeah. It could even be 800. Yes, it could be 900. Experts warn delays could kill businesses. Just so that we explain to you, it has already killed businesses. All right? So what you mean is it may
has
kill...
killed humans.
Yes, it has killed people, it has killed businesses. So you're saying it will kill more businesses. We get that.
Yeah.
And push people into depression. People are already depressed. People have been hospitalized. And it's not a few, very many.
Yeah.
Right. Left-hand corner, Haji's entry as MPs approve his NIS nomination. Okay. Tuesday, yesterday, they approved Haji's nomination.
Yes.
To be the next Director General of NIS.
Yes.
Right. There was an educationist in Kitui by the name of Robert Anthony Wood's father, Yani. Okay. He's the one who 30 years kept St. Charles Luanga School in Kitui in academic stardom. They want to set up a foundation to honor this man.
So a foundation in honor of
Robert Anthony Woods.
Alrighty.
Yes. Then there's a picture here. I feel valued, says Kipyegon after State House goodies. I know these are lovely pictures. Very, very nice pictures. Now this is the example we want. So that when a Kenyan excels in something, State House visit.
Yep.
With the pictures.
Very fast.
Yep.
Yes. Okay?
Yep.
Every time a Kenyan does something that is exceptional, bring them to State House.
Good.
Yes.
Let them meet the head of state.
When a Kenyan does something which is exceptionally good, thank you very much, Ndu, you bring them here.
Exceptionally good.
Yes, because exceptional
can also be
Mackenzie was exceptional. We don't want him to go to State House.
No,
we
not
want
those
him
ones.
want him to go to jail.
It's the other house.
Yes.
Okay. Let him go to the other house. Sawa, let's take this break. It's 6:30. Also, remember, if you'd like to get your copy of the Nairobi, and it's coming out on Friday, but it comes out the hard copy on Friday. It goes like hotcake. You can still access it online. epaper.standardmedia.co.ke. That's epaper.standardmedia.co.ke. All the hot gossip, all the stories that you think cannot be told will be told right there. But also some very good analysis on many things that are happening in the country, and some investigative pieces as well. The Nairobian.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Bro, the game is about to start. Let's go. Yeah. But just give me a minute, man, Malize. What's up? Who are you chatting with? I'm just filing my returns, then we bounce. Kwanza, I hope you remember the deadline is June 30th. The game will start, banner. Where it doesn't take time. And yep, I'm done. That was fast. Show me how you've done yours, cause I don't want to pay any penalty. Just log into itax.kra.go.ke and file your returns. And if you don't know how to, just go to KRA's YouTube page and watch a tutorial. It's that easy. Allah, filing returns is easier than cooking. Easy peasy, msay.
Kenya Revenue Authority reminds all PIN holders to file their 2022 tax returns on or before 30th of June 2023. For assistance, call 0711 099 999 or email callcenter@kra.go.ke. You can also visit any of the KRA service centers or any Huduma center countrywide. Kenya Revenue Authority. Tulipe ushuru, tujitegemee.
Okay, so what's building up? We're looking at it building up on Jogo Road. It started early. And also on the Thika Superhighway, now a lot more than it was before. Is it coming in from the drift just after Utali? Some traffic there. Also on Kiambu Road, now traffic has started early on Kiambu Road. We're likely to see it pick up as you go towards 7 o'clock. It's looking good coming out of Westlands. You shouldn't have too much of an issue as you get to what was the roundabout heading towards the city. That piles up some. We're seeing some movement on Naivasha Road, then spilling over towards Gitanga Road, Riara Road. That whole area is likely to get crazy through the morning. Let us know what's going on where you are this morning and talk on Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Speaking about people who've done exceptional things in the negative, Shakahola death toll up to 303 after 19 more bodies have been exhumed. Exactly. Let it meet you with shock and horror. The death count from the Shakahola massacre has risen to 303 after 19 more bodies were found in shallow graves yesterday. The remains of 6 adults and 13 children were unearthed from 7 graves in the Shakahola forest. This is the highest number of bodies recovered in a single day since the third round of excavations began last week. 4 children were found in one grave near the home of Good News International Church leader Paul Mackenzie, located in the forest in Malindi, Kilifi County. The victims were believed to be followers of Mackenzie, who is currently in police custody. He's accused of instructing his congregation to starve themselves to death in order to meet Jesus. Let me take a break on that story and talk about one story that we saw yesterday, where the victims who were rescued alive have been refusing to eat. And so the state is seeking orders to have them imprisoned and then force-fed breakfast, lunch and dinner, because they're still, in the throes of passionate religion.
So why prison?
Because
why can't you force feed them where you have them now?
Or wherever. I'm not sure, but it was specific prison.
Because prison is meant to be punitive.
Exactly.
You can force someone. You can torture somebody to eat.
Which then
because why can't you force feed somebody in hospital? Why do you want to do it behind the walls of prison?
Why can't you hook them up to a tube if you must? This is the thing. But that was what came out yesterday. All right, so back to this. During the third round of excavations, about 20 new graves have been discovered as investigators try to uncover the full scope of the tragedy. According to a detective who asked not to be named, most of the victims found during this round, unfortunately, were children. Since we began phase 3 exhumation last week, we've been exhuming more children than adults. The level of decomposition means that they died at different times. Earlier, Chief Government Pathologist Johansen Odur, doctor, said that most of the children had been strangled to death. Speaking yesterday at the Shakahola Command Center, Coast Regional Commander Rhoda Onyancha said that over 600 people are still unaccounted for. At least 613 people are reported to be missing. We have put every effort to find those who are still alive. Ms. Onyancha, she also said that 35 arrests have been made in connection with the cult associated with Mackenzie. The suspects are being held at various police stations within Kilifi. So far, police have saved 95 survivors during search and rescue operations on Mackenzie's vast property. Some survivors were too weak to walk when found, and 19 have been reunited with their families.
Okay.
Across the country...
Has any of the 95 died since being rescued?
No.
Okay. Despite refusing to eat?
Yeah, they've been hanging on to something. So they refuse to eat the 3 meals a day. Some would take a little bit of something when forced. But now they're saying in order to keep them alive, they have to force them. Okay, across the country, police have been interrogating other religious leaders suspecting of propagating harmful and human rights violating teachings. Speaking in Shakahola last week, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki said the operations will take longer than initially anticipated.
And that's where the Standard Njoroge came in.
Yes.
This guy should give a timeline, right? It will take longer. What is it?
What does that mean? How? And you should give numbers. So
do you want more people to scout the vast land?
Exactly.
What do you want?
Are you moving in some kind of systematic nature? You love 800 acres. Have you started on this end and you're going steadily? Has it taken?
But you can start from various ends.
This is the thing. Can you have a team on this side? Can you have a team on this other side and then work towards the middle? Or do you just come and randomly? And if you don't give that information, then we do not know. And how long? How much longer?
Plus again the postmortems. You start, stop. So postmortems, you're now starting another batch of 90.
Then you take a break from exhumation and then you start again. So this is sad.
He needs to explain.
He does. And for me, that more children are found, and then to hear Dr. Odur tell us that they've been strangled, it breaks my heart. This is the situation in Shakahola.
Way. So there are some 200,000 secondary students who have not been receiving government funding despite attending classes and even feeding. Basically, government capitation. Capitation goes per child. How does the government know the child? Government knows child because there's a system called NEMIS. NEMIS is the National Education Management Information System that has registered all the children. Now there are some 212,000 students whose details in NEMIS are controversial. What has happened? The CS for Education, Ezekiel Machogu, told MPs that this trend may continue for a while until details of these learners are fully and accurately captured. He singled out controversies and inconsistencies around learners' birth certificates as the cause of some learners living on capitation money of their colleagues. He says in some cases, serial numbers of birth certificates are shared among learners. What does that mean?
What do you mean? You have two.
So a birth certificate for Eric Latif is number blah 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 blah. Birth certificate for Nduoko is number blah blah blah. Same number. So in NEMIS there's wait a minute.
Not possible.
Yeah.
Because each number is supposed to be unique.
Yep. So he says there are some serial numbers that are shared among learners, raising questions of the accuracy and thoroughness of the data in the NEMIS system. Machogu also says in some instances birth certificates are missing, hence incomplete registration of students' data in the government system. The effect is that these learners are feeding and using resources courtesy of other learners whose data has been captured and receiving government capitation. Secondary school heads on Tuesday revealed that there exist thousands of students who carried by the weight of those who receive capitation. Another development that leads to financial crisis in the schools. Kahi Ndimuli is the chairman of the Secondary School Heads Association. He says, we continue keeping the students in schools because learners cannot send them away. Because teachers cannot send them away because the mistake of funding may not be of their making. They have to feed on the same food of those who've been funded. Indimuli said that the challenge boils down to schools with small populations which are forced to reduce the ratio of service delivery to their learners. You can imagine having 200 learners who are not funded in a day school of 500 students away from capitation. It becomes a big headache. Now, my issue is this NEMIS. How long would it take for this issue to be sorted? Machogu says it will continue for a while.
No.
A while, how long?
Ambiguity that is met.
And you see that ambiguity. If you see that they do not want to really open and audit this NEMIS system, it also could mean that there's some details in NEMIS that are actually fake. Same way you have a student whose details are questionable is the same way you could have a ghost student in the system.
Or even a ghost school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. What MPs should be demanding here is stop everything, Machogu, just audit that thing.
But let me ask you, this 212,000 that they speak of, this is in the system. They've not said that students have been physically identified and saying this student X in X school has not received capitation. It's according to the system.
It's both.
It's both, okay.
It's both. There's a physical student in X school. That physical student's details in NEMIS have question marks.
Okay.
Very many question marks. So NEMIS cannot allocate them capitation. You see? The student exists.
But why are their details not in NEMIS?
Yeah, that's the question.
The details are in NEMIS, but there's question marks. There's a missing birth certificate, a birth certificate number that is shared with someone else. There's all this incomplete registration of students' data. There are questions in NEMIS with regards to student Charles Timothy Muga.
And then it also means, therefore, that perhaps the amount of money that is sent to the schools for capitation have a direct correlation with the number of students who are in NEMIS.
Yes.
That's what should happen.
Yes, that's what should happen. And we are saying that the number of students in some of these schools are more than the number of students who are in NEMIS.
Yep.
For me, it's
Kahin Dimuli is saying there's a school, for example, that would have, let's say, 100 students. Physical students coming to school, 100. Okay? But NEMIS only recognizes 92. There are some 8 students there whose capitation does not come. Now, the school head knows these 8, there's an issue about them in NEMIS. Can't send them away because they're here.
Okay.
So they have to share.
But then now what we are being told, this then ambiguity that meets it, unfortunately, is unacceptable. Because if there's a bug, it should be very easy to go into the system and fix it.
But it is an even
212,000 is not a lot compared to the number of students that you have finishing an exam per year, for example. Just in one set, primary. Primary, you have 1 million students around the country that will sit KCPE at the end of this year. Same way you have almost 1 million who will sit KCSE at the end of this year, isn't it? 212,000 is not too difficult for you to go through and check and see what is going on here. But then we're always saying, oh yeah, we'll get to it. Mark my words, we'll get to it. It will still come back and we'll say, oh yeah, we are getting to it.
I don't know, when this problem is pointed out, and then the reasons given for why it is the way it is. The unfortunate thing is the reasons raise more questions than they provide solutions that you find to be acceptable.
Or you have to ask yourself, really, then is it deliberate to have this bug in the system so that there can be some benefit to one or two individuals somewhere? Because it doesn't make sense to me. If I have a database here and I know that this database fuels anything I am going to do in the future in terms of payments, in terms of capitation, this database is what I depend on. And then there's something in it that's not working. See, it's obvious. You fix the thing.
Actually, the way databases work, you have data managers, but you have people who work in that particular department or section. What you just described is what they do. There's this report that has been sent by the schools. There's that constant process of always checking and verifying things. Believe me, you never actually stop. Because some errors may be human errors, meaning somebody may have entered the entry wrongly. But sometimes the system can also malfunction.
And if it goes beyond, let's say truly that this pupil presented a birth certificate whose number also matches a birth certificate that was presented by another student in another county. That issue is with the registrar of persons. Okay? Go to the registrar. Because these two people will have a problem for the rest of their lives. It means when they go to register for ID,
there'll be a problem.
There will be an issue.
There will be an issue.
There will always be an issue.
And this is government. This is government. It's government to government. So these are not problems that are difficult to resolve, really.
You pick up the phone and you say, Oga, there's a problem here. Can we fix it? Yes. Because you know the repercussions. If it is not, somebody will have a problem in terms of capitation. Sort it out. What's the problem?
All you need to do is reallocate these numbers or give this one student a different number. That's all you need to do. As long as you verify, go to the system that you have to verify. Go to the chief, establish, yes, this child is actually here. Everybody knows this child belongs to this. Fine. Sort it out.
Believe me, errors do occur. And such things can happen. But then when the discussion around the error takes center stage, you have to ask, why are you not providing a solution? Why are you focusing on the problem? And every other discussion is the problem. Every other discussion is the problem. Why?
So is it deliberate?
It is deliberate.
It is. Tells you that NEMIS is actually paying capitation to ghosts. That is what I see.
It. There are schools there that exist only
see.
in name, and they're receiving capitation for 20 plus students.
Yeah.
You tell me, 20 plus students coming to 22,000, right? Every term, you ask yourself, who is enjoying this money? It's not going to the students who need it, because you cannot tell me your system has a bug until you're able to report on it. You can report on the system and you've done nothing about it. Your job is to collect the information and pass it on to the next person and say, oh, by the way, Oga Eric, the system has a bug. So, have you fixed it? We're getting to it. It will take time.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
And then you go. City, tell us that story. The one you wanted to tell us.
Right. There's a story I'm looking at in the Star. Okay? It's an interesting story. Duo charter course for women in blue economy. Okay. Right. This is a story of some two ladies, okay? Harriet Kadzo and the ship inspector Betty McKenna. Now, these are women who are in an industry that one very rarely hears the name of women being mentioned or in any positions of authority. This is in the seafaring business, okay? Elizabeth Marami is excited about her role behind the wheel of a luxurious celebrity cruise ships. She pilots one of the newest vessels in a growing global fleet of cruise ships, which is capable of holding 3,260 passengers and 1,400 crew members. Witnessing the vast and beauty of the ocean, encountering diverse marine wildlife, and navigating through challenging, breathtaking waterways are some of the remarkable aspects of the job, she says. Each voyage presents opportunities to learn and adopt new situations. While the experience of sailing on the Indian Ocean, exploring the sunny coastlines, stunning beaches, and spotting dolphins jumping from the water could be most people's idea of a memorable occasion, Marami's views this as part of her job. Now, why do I mention this? There was a time when Kenya celebrated the idea that there were some women who had become captains. First of all, it started as women pilots.
Yes.
Then they became captain, okay, of our airlines. Now, when it comes to the seafaring business, one hardly hears of women.
Yeah.
It's always men.
Yep.
So when you have a situation where women, Kenyan women, have risen to the position where they actually hold the top jobs, it's something to talk about, it's something to mention, it's something to acknowledge.
Very true.
Yes.
Very true. That's a good story. It's a happy story.
No, it's a very, very happy story.
It's a very good story.
Very, very happy story.
Very good.
Yes.
It's just like this one. In 2019, there's a woman called Helen Maeda who installed CCTV cameras at her house, at the gate, okay? For obvious reasons. Security. Sawa. Now, she lives next to a guy called Kennedy Orangi.
Thank you.
These CCTV cameras, where they are like this, they are also capturing happenings across the road. And across the road is Kennedy's home. Kennedy was not happy. Kennedy came and told her, remove this CCTV. You are spying on me and my family. She was like, I'm not spying on you. I'm just putting the CCTV so I can see if anything happens.
Security.
It's for security purposes. Kennedy went to court. Okay?
I'm waiting to hear what court said.
Yeah. And Orangi was accusing Maeda of spying on him and his family. However, she's told the court that she installed the cameras to protect her family. Court records show that Orangi and Maeda live next to each other. They also show that Orangi tried to get Maeda to move the cameras so that they would not point at his property, but she could not cooperate, and efforts to resolve the matter out of court hit a dead end. He then filed a lawsuit in the High Court where he told Justice Hedwig Ongundi that Maeda was violating his privacy. There's a travesty of justice to be occasioned against the petitioner on the grounds that on or about March 10th, 2022, the respondent, who is the petitioner's neighbor, without consent and knowledge of the petitioner, erected a CCTV camera and or spying device overlooking the petitioner's property. The court heard that Orangi and his family had not been enjoying their private life out of fear that their neighbor was spying on them. The invasion of privacy by the respondent is continuous and without legal or legitimate basis. If the respondent is not stopped by this honorable court, the said CCTV camera and or spying devices erected by the respondent continues to capture and have information on the private domestic affairs and image of the petitioner and his family members.
Okay.
She is recording things that are happening in my home. She's keeping them.
How would
she's spying on me and my family.
But how did he know that she was recording things happening?
That's what a CCTV does.
Yeah, but look, you know, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of how we have neighbors.
Yes.
I have a CCTV.
Yes.
It points towards the periphery.
Yes.
The periphery may include someone else's compound.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? So,
my intent is not to look
people
at you.
put
I want to know what's
CCTV.
going on in surroundings.
People put CCTV at the gate.
Yes.
And also along their walls. Right?
Yes.
So some of those CCTV is not only looking into your compound.
No, it is not.
It crosses over into the neighbor's
Yes,
compound.
it does.
That means you're also looking at what's happening in that is my privacy. That's my private space.
So,
and all that information is being captured. I don't know for how long you keep it in your system. I don't know what you have. Okay. I don't know how you review, how you sit back and enjoy watching me and my children eating omena.
All right. Is there a middle ground where the CCTV can cover my wall and not invading your privacy?
That's what he told her to do. You make sure that this thing hits range.
But maybe that's what she did. Maybe that's what she did.
She did not.
How did he now know?
He told the court that he felt unsafe, knowing that his neighbor had vital information and images about him and his family.
Okay.
What was he into?
Right.
He said he built a barrier on the fence to block the camera, but she moved them higher.
All right, there's an issue here.
Do they know each other?
She, however, fought against the lawsuit. She says she did not know about the problem until the court case started. She denied having any prior discussion about this CCTV issue, explaining that she installed the cameras because her home had been robbed. The court heard that the CCTV cameras had helped the police figure out that the thieves entered her yard and broke into the house through Orangi's backyard.
Okay.
After the robbery.
I'm seeing it
Maeda
now.
said she went to Orangi's house and his wife showed her around the compound. They discovered that the thieves got in by jumping over the fence using a wooden chair. She told the court that she had told Orangi's wife about her plan to install the cameras. She also put up a sign at her back gate letting people know that her house was under CCTV, 24-hour CCTV surveillance. Justice Ongundi sat back, listened, took notes, heard that the houses were built in such a way that the residents could see into each other's compounds. Maeda claimed the security cameras were installed at a 45-degree angle, and she was telling the judge that she had invited Orangi to bring technicians to check them if he did not accept the offer. Hii mambo imeenda yote. Okay, now let me tell you what the judge said. In fact, this neighbor is arguing that under the data protection law, Maeda is considered a data controller, and the footage and monitoring from her CCTV are considered personal data under this law. Orangi argues that the camera takes away his control over his personal information, which is being accessed and recorded without his consent and a justifiable cause. On the other hand, Maeda says she has the right to protect her property arguing that there was no proof that she was spying on Orangi and his family, instead saying the camera's view was moved because it was being blocked by overgrown plants. After listening to both arguments, Justice Ongudi concluded that Maeda had shown she did not install the cameras to spy on her neighbor. Also noted that the cameras were installed in 2019 and not 2022. The judge also noted that Maeda's theft claim was supported by a police report. It has therefore not been proved by the petitioner that the installation was for ulterior motives, the judge said, adding that the evidence showed the cameras were pointed at Maeda's property. He, however, said that although Maeda claimed she had informed Orangi's wife about the installation, neither she nor Orangi called her to clarify the issue. Wife was never brought here. They're saying, I told his wife, niliambia mama. The judge said Orangi's wife would have assisted the court to determine whether there was consent or not. He cited the technician's report showing the CCTV system could be manipulated and accessed online, giving Orangi legitimate concerns about his privacy. Justice Ongudi was of the view that Maeda needed to first register with the data commissioner and prove that she had sought consent from her neighbor. There is no evidence to show that the respondent was registered as a data controller. It is apparent, according to the Act, that consent cannot be an assumption as deposed by the respondent. The respondent is under the obligation to receive express and unequivocal consent from the petitioner in view of his right to privacy. No such express consent is demonstrated. The judge declared that Orangi's privacy had been violated.
Good grief.
It's clear that the respondent had a legitimate reason to install this, but she did not follow the law. There is a data protection. Remember, we had the data commissioner here?
Yeah.
This is it. This is the extent to which it goes. You're installing CCTV, you now become a data controller because you're capturing information and you're storing it. Who's affected by that data? You've got to seek their written consent.
Very interesting how times are changing.
Can you imagine? This one is opening a floodgate.
That's what I was supposed to say. Everybody who's ever installed a CCTV camera anywhere they are can jump on this.
Yep.
And now say, excuse me, you cannot.
Yep.
If you're in a school, for example, and there happens to be CCTV in a room where you're having a meeting, without the consent of the people in the meeting, you cannot have your CCTV on recording them. You cannot without their consent.
Actually, that is an interesting point, because then what about if you go to a cultural establishment?
Yeah, exactly. That too. That's
Which
what I'm saying.
has a
This opens the
CCTV.
floodgates. Yeah, exactly.
So
it depends on the category of data. Remember when the data commissioner told us there are several categories. There are those that are mandated by law, that you must
public
capture
space,
some
for
data.
example.
And then there are others where, now I don't know whether cultural establishments, as you say.
That would be interesting. Imagine in an incident whereby they were looking for evidence, and then it turned out to be that in this particular establishment at this time, the CCTV or whatever was on, somebody may have or may have not committed a crime. You could actually go to court and say, excuse me, I was in this establishment. They did not have my consent to use this. So this evidence is inadmissible in a court of law.
on the other hand,
That's why in economies like in the US, for example, you have to go and seek an order from the court to use that.
Okay, to even access it.
Yeah.
But remember also, it acts as proof. It could act as an alibi for you, because if you're talking about, it's a public place. You're
Alibi for you if you didn't commit the crime.
Yes.
Or
you're already in the public domain
or
anyway.
damnation
Now,
for you if
imagine
you did.
the public ones, maybe there may be an argument. Imagine now that cultural establishment is across your home.
Yes.
It's capturing goings on in your private space.
Indeed.
Bas.
But imagine a situation where robbers come to your home. Anyway.
Okay, sour.
This one. Oh, CCTVs in neighborhoods. Now these are conversations to start having in the neighborhood associations. Good morning. It's now 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is News. I'm Dennis Oseto. At least 19 bodies of people believed to be followers of controversial preacher Paul Mackenzie were exhumed from the vast 800-acre Shakahola forest in Kilifi. Onyancha also confirmed that number of DNA samples taken from relatives looking for their missing person is still 93. She said those arrested are still 35, while followers rescued remain to be 95. Onyancha said no arrest or rescue had been reported yesterday. Exhumation continues today. And Nurdin Haji now awaits to be sworn in as the next Director General of National Intelligence Service following unanimous approval by MPs. The National Assembly approved his nomination following a report tabled by the House Defence, Intelligence and Foreign Affairs Committee that gave a note for his approval following his vetting.
2. The nominee complies with the Section 81B of the National Intelligence Service Act, whereby he meets all the requirements pertaining to the appointment of the office of the Director General. That the nominee has held the following positions and in total has had a career spanning over 18 years in the public service, most of it having been performed at the National Intelligence Service at senior levels. Honorable Speaker, the nominee has not been charged in any court of law, and therefore this also informed us on his suitability.
In the report, the Nelson Koech-led committee exuded confidence that Haji is suitable to take the helm of the National Intelligence Service following his vast experience and capabilities. The legislators eyed Haji to ensure that he safeguards the lives and properties of Kenyans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support, and I can see that the officer that has been nominated for this job is a distinguished officer, Mr. Speaker, who has served in the service very well, who has an exemplary career, Mr. Speaker, in the service. And Mr. Speaker, I think is one appointment that is going to move this country forward, Mr. Speaker, and this should be an example of all appointments that will be brought to this House, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, and I also rise to support one who has served the office that he has served in as DPP with unmatched integrity, Honorable Speaker.
And President William Ruto has told Azimio leaders that the outlawed Mungiki group will not be allowed to operate in Kenya. Speaking in Kirinyaga County, the head of state accused the opposition of using the outlawed group to advance its agenda. He urged them to instead engage Kenyans on issues affecting them.
Hatuwezi kuruhusu vikundi haramu. I want to say, na nataka niseme, wale viongozi wetu wa upinzani wanajaribu kutueleza ya kwamba wanataka ati warudishe Mungiki, ati wakuje waanze mambo ya bangi, ati wakuje waanze kutoa wananchi ushuru isiyo halali, ati wakuje waangaishe kina mama wetu. Mimi nataka niwaambie wale viongozi wa upinzani, please, good people, kama mnafikiri hii Mungiki ni kitu ya maana sana, pelekeni watoto wenu kwa mambo ya Mungiki. Wachana na watoto wa taifa letu la Kenya.
And the government has shut down at least 5,995 liquor joints as the war against illicit brews intensified. The Ministry of Interior and the National Government said in a statement that the facilities were closed down due to what it described as serious safety breaches and failure to comply with essential legal requirements. This, as President William Ruto has warned that the government will do everything to ensure that alcohol and drug abuse is addressed.
Tumekubaliana na watu wa Nakada ya kwamba we are going to review all the legislation to make sure that illicit drinks, mambo ya ethanol, mambo ya vinywaji yenye iko na sumu, lazima tuikomeshe. Na watu wa provincial administration, wewe kama chief, wewe kama mzee ya nyumba 10, hauwezi kuwa mahali pale watoto ndio hawa wanalala kwa mtaro, wengine wanaangaishwa na madawa ya kulevya, na wewe uko pale kama kiongozi. We have to work together.
And in the ongoing battle against Al-Shabaab infiltration along Kenya's border, security agencies in the northern eastern region are adopting a strategy centered on community engagement and grassroots information sharing. As pressure mounts on the Somalia-based radical Islamist group, security and intelligence committees have been meticulously assessing the government's response to prevent insurgents from seeking refuge in Kenya. Northeastern Regional Commissioner John Otieno revealed that security teams are now working tirelessly to enhance the level program will end quality of intelligence gathered from local leaders and civilians. This collaborative effort aims to prevent illegal activities across the border. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
On the Thika Superhighway this morning, there is traffic coming in all the way from that Thika Road Mall area, Githurai, coming in all the way through towards the Pangani underpass, and we're going to see traffic heavy there. You want to use the service lanes, it's going to help you out quite some. Looking at the northern bypass, there's traffic spilling over towards Kiambu Road. Just past DCI is where we're seeing traffic now. In a number of lanes, it's bumper to bumper, it's moving. In some areas, it's a standstill in others. Limuru Road, let's look at that. It's moving as you just get past Training College, past United Nations Avenue, out then towards Muthaiga. All right, James Gishuru also packed up quite some, spilling over towards Waiyaki Way this morning, and there's traffic that started on Gong Road, Naivasha Road, then into Gitanga Road, Riara. All of this is very busy right about now. Wednesday morning is going to be quite something. Let's know what's going on where you are and keep things moving. Let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up,
7 after 7.
down.
Good morning. Welcome to the
This
second
is
hour of
the
the Situation Room. Thank you very much for choosing us as the way to start your day. Sarit Center is also thanking you for patronizing them for the last 40 years. 40.
Imagine.
Uh-huh.
Center turns 40 and is also saying, you know what? There are many outlets where you can experience the magic that happens at Sarit, your city. And even as you go out to spend 2,040 shillings over lunchtime, how about you go down to the Daily Cafe and Bistro? It's introducing an oasis in the city. The Daily Cafe Bistro has opened at Sarit, from their food to their service and to their modern designs that create an atmosphere of new and tasteful ways of dining. They have brought us a haven in the city. As you make your way to Sarit through Karuna Road, let their live greenery and open sitting space be your pointer to the restaurant. Are you going to go there and spend 2,040 shillings to do it? And then you can get on the magic wheel and you never know what you could land on thereafter as Sarit, your city, turns 40.
Indeed. So, the issue today and tomorrow in the National Assembly is going to be the report by the Committee of Finance and Planning on the Finance Bill 2023. So we've already seen, okay, there are some things that the committee has said. We heard from the people, and from those people, we have then responded. And we are proposing some amendments to what had initially been brought to this house. That's what we want to discuss. Dr. Abraham Rugo, a friend of the show, joins us. Man who understands budget and budget issues. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. It's good to be back here and off and on conversations around this.
Yes.
First, I think we have said everything we can say about this matter to an extent that there's an increased public consciousness around matters taxation. I think this perhaps is the best gain that has been made around this season for many years. I mean, the finance bill is tabled every year, by the way. And from last year, if I'm not wrong, it's the first time the finance bill is being tabled together with the budget estimates. Parliament made a decision that we want to see when we are approving how much will be spent, we also want to approve. We want to see. So they are all tabled
Where
together.
the money will
Normally,
be coming from.
it will be tabled after 30th of June. So basically, it will be tabled after the speech tomorrow. Is when the finance bill would come to the House. And that time, they have already appropriated everything. They have made decisions about what is...
They've basically approved expenditure.
Yes. So at the face of it, very good idea to make sure that we are able to see both statements together. And you see the kind of responses. I think the chairman confirmed that they received 1,600 or is it 1,800 submissions, and they sat. And I mean, I was one of those who made a presentation at the Hilton Garden Inn where they were meeting, and they listened to about 140 stakeholders, and they were seated there for many hours every day. Which, for me, that's a gain in terms of public engagement, in terms of public participation. The question is, what have they done with what they were told?
With the information that you give them.
Yes.
Take a pause. Let's welcome you first into the conversation, right? NCT has the day's proverb. This week's proverbs are from Zambia.
Whose capital is Lusaka. Don't start a fight just because your companion is strong.
Don't start a fight just because your companion is strong. Dr. Rugo, when you hear this?
This reminds me of very good days. I was not always this big. I was a very tiny.
All this strong.
All this strong. So what I did when I was in primary school, I kept big people around me, like real bullies. You know, I kept one or two around me, and that was a basis of for me to, you know.
So did you start fights, or were you just using them as?
Well, you know, from time to time, I was also insulted, so I started something. I reacted.
It was all your fault.
But I used to react knowing niko na jeshi yangu.
You became a Kenyan very early in life.
So that proverb is very, but it's very true. You know, how else are you supposed to survive? So it's yeah. But anyway, definitely, I think it means that you shouldn't count on the strength of others to save you. You shouldn't get into complicated situations because you know somebody will come to your rescue.
But is that not politicians do and political parties do all the time? I know I have a majority in parliament, so I will do exactly what.
That's exactly what is happening right now.
I know. My companion is.
I have a strong companion.
I
have a strong companion.
So and I can speak to you the way I like. Yes.
No, and I can say to you anything I want.
Anything I want.
Because my companion will save me.
Yes.
But in real life, sometimes your companion also chooses self-preservation over your rescue.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to start an enemy on behalf of others. Just because I'm with you, then your enemy becomes my enemy. No.
Yeah. But you see it all the place. You know, people just provoke others because they know somebody else.
Somebody's going, yeah.
I know. I've got big brother.
I have a big brother.
Yeah. So continue the conversation. Give us your experience when you appeared before the Finance and Planning Committee. Right? What were you presenting? How did they invite you? How did it go?
So first of all, we were invited, and they had a long list of people. Arguably, a lot of private sector institutions, audit firms, and law firms were invited. The day we were invited, we were there by 9 o'clock. We were to present at 10 o'clock, but it was until 4 o'clock that we got audience with the committee.
No, they meant Sakumi.
No.
They had
you see now these Kenyans
inverted the clock.
We read wrongly. So I don't want to know what the guys who were supposed to present Sakumi, who also checked in at 3:30, what time they presented. And there was a long queue. In a way, they allowed people to really argue out their cases. But of course, as the day ran over, they started saying, summarize your points. We appeared there as a part of the Okoa Uchumi campaign, which, you know, quite a number of members have been here. My recollection is that the committee seemed to suggest two things. One is that they were willing to listen but two, their hands were tied.
Explain.
When they said their hands were tied, they basically were trying to say, you see, the kind of situation we are in as a country, these things, are you not looking at the positives? And I see the language used in one of the statements that the chairman gave, talking about the negative impact of retaining VAT at 8% outweighs, the positives. So almost it was the same language of, you guys, don't you see these things? Can't you see the struggle?
So they were trying to basically, as you are engaging with you, they're trying to justify
precisely
what's contained here.
Yeah. Which I thought was perhaps, in the spirit of deliberation, I think it's a good thing. But in the spirit of listening, I think it perhaps didn't come out the way it should have come out, because it almost came out in the same language of, hii kitu ni mzuri, this thing is good, and you should just accept it. And you see, it was also coming at the background of it will pass without even changing a comma or a full stop, And for me, that was not a surprise, because I have been in this space for now 16 years. From the days of the Institute of Economic Affairs. And we've presented a memorandum, literally, I think every year that I have been involved in this work, I've made a submission in one way or another. Some have been completely ignored, and I say ignored because I don't know what is done with it, because we never get feedback from. But the fact that this was an open forum, that even we sat in their presentations of other Kenyans and organizations, for me, that was a good thing. One thing I really hope can happen in the future, can this actually be done in a public space and live? So that
like what exactly?
Like, for instance, do it even somewhere like KICC where everybody can come.
They also did the KICC session, didn't they?
The KICC sessions are neither here nor there, because really it's more presentations than listening. This was a good time to listen. But two, in this day and age where technology is good, it doesn't make sense for somebody from Mandera. Of course, there were constituency conversations, some of which were open, others which were fairly closed, because then the MPs of those constituencies decided this is the time for my people to say their issues to the national government. Some even tried to lock out, people from other constituencies who are coming in, and they were saying no. But there are people are saying no. But this is a national conversation. It's only that it's been selected to happen in these 16 counties and in this particular space. I still believe that there is room for a national conversation on these issues, where anybody who wants to make an input can make an input. Technology allows that. We saw during COVID, technology does allow that. We, where I work at the International Budget Partnership Kenya, we've been able to pull that kind of a conversation. So it was really everybody saying everything to the committee, and at one point I wondered, how much of this was really being absorbed. They have a very good chairman who understands the issues, but also tried, as I've said, really tried to justify why things are.
Trying to explain it. Did you get a sense of unanimity with the committee members? Like, were the committee members speaking the same language?
Not quite. Not quite. And it's difficult, of course, to know at the face of the conversation, but as you talk to them differently, I think many as they listened on, they were coming to appreciate, hey, by the way, this thing is not what we thought. Of course, there are those who are on very strong party line, that this is what our party, this is what is going to give our party success. But perhaps what was most interesting is that when it came to the discussion around the housing discussion, and I also sat in when the PS came. The PS came when we were still there waiting. He's actually responsible for why we delayed and waited longer. That's a story for another day. But one of the things he was saying, but look at how this housing will help your constituencies. We are planning to build houses in every. This is the first time I heard it clearly that they were planning to build houses in every constituency. It was no longer even counted. Every constituency, 290 of them. And that was new, because that had not been in the conversations. Initially, it was counties that were donating land and that seemed to be an appeal to say MPs. Your issues are also taken care of. You know, we have taken care, and so that was what was so. So I think the reality of the situation we are in as an economy was coming to bear, and you could hear some of them starting to say, perhaps maybe we could have thought about this in a different way. Perhaps there are things we can delay, because that's what. If I'm not wrong, and I can't recall who said this, that about 80% of the people who made submissions were disagreeing. Of course, some in phrasing said they reject the entire finance bill. Of course, that is wrong, because there's nothing like a finance bill. It's clauses. It's different clauses. You cannot reject the entire thing. You know, you need to, because there are some things that are good. You know, in that was my sense. That's my take from the conversations.
Okay. So then now with most recent announcements that we saw over the last 24 hours, essentially, and I don't want to whittle it down to basics, good or bad, but is it a good thing that we've seen the budging that we've seen with some of the areas, whereby the participation and the engagement that we saw over the last 1 month easily, or just a little bit more than that, has yielded something?
Yeah, at the face of it, it's a good thing. At the face of it, I think it shows that, yes, somebody is listening. But the question is, what are they listening? What kind of badging? Let me use the one that I have heard very straight, which was even confirmed by His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi yesterday in a meeting where I was. He said, we have listened to the people and we've agreed that this housing thing will be 1.5%. But the conversation was never about the percentage.
It was that it's there at all.
That was never the conversation. We were not saying that we like this thing, but Mali Tuko, we are so pressed. No, that was not the conversation.
What was the conversation?
The conversation was, what's the problem you're trying to solve?
Okay.
And the problem, if the problem is people who have no incomes getting housing, then are you asking those who have incomes to subsidize? Which is a language in NHIF. The NHIF language is very clear that you pay according to your income, 2.75% of your gross income. That's and that is very clear. It's social health insurance. You know, so basically you are saying those who have pay also support for those who do not have, because it does not mean that if I pay more, I will consume more.
You'll get better service.
Or I'll get the same service depending on my sickness. But here is, on one hand, you are saying that the people who don't have housing are those without incomes. But the people you are charging and you are causing to pay for this scheme are those who have incomes.
But do they have houses?
Sorry?
But do they have houses?
You have not asked them either. You cannot determine that they don't have houses.
You have asked them in a sense, as you have data. You know
precisely
how many people own homes and how many people have income.
So if you go back to the numbers, and the numbers that were used even in one of the meetings were 2017 numbers. Now we have updated numbers. We have, for instance, the census of 2019. What we know is that in rural areas, about 80% of the people who live in their own homes.
Yeah.
We can discuss the quality. We can discuss the different other mechanisms.
True.
In urban areas, it's about 20% of ownership. But that is not equal to the number of people who don't live in a house.
Yeah.
So equating proper housing to home ownership, I think, is a completely different discussion. Two, you and I who have incomes are not necessarily waiting for government to help build a house. And what other countries have done is to deal with the mortgage systems.
Yeah.
Three, in fact, if houses, and I like what Professor Omenya did talk about, if houses is all you are going for, in places like Nairobi, you have an oversupply of houses, but they are not affordable. So what you actually have an oversupply. Yep. You have a surplus.
It's the affordability of the house.
It's the affordability. So the affordability of the house is not by taking more money from the person earning income. It's asking, how can we help them own? So it's an income challenge that you are dealing with and not necessarily a lack of houses.
Okay. So by reducing it to 1.5%, you don't feel that it has addressed
I don't think
the submissions that were presented.
So now, okay, now by reducing, first of all, I think we need to know whether the total amount, the maximum amount, remains as the same. So by reducing to 1.5%, what you do is that if you still retain that the maximum contribution is still 5,000, because we have not heard about that one yet, what you have done is that you basically have just moved the number of, remember initially it was 85,000. Yeah. Anybody who was going to earn 85,000 and above will contribute the maximum 5,000. And from there, whether you earn 2 million or whatever, you are going to contribute, 5,000. By reducing to 1.5%, basically you raise that figure. So that then you reprieve more people. So more people will pay less.
Yeah.
If the issue was that you needed money to be able to build more houses, then it means even the income, from an income perspective, if you were to argue that this was a good thing, government is going to already build houses. Now they're asking you, so what they're saying, if you are going to pay, assuming even it reduces the 5,000 marks, for instance, with 5,000 and you wanted to own a house of 3 million, you are going to pay for it for 50 years. From the math we had done earlier. Are you saying now you're going to pay for it in 100 years, or more years? Because remember, the affordable is that you are paying for your own house. You are paying to own it.
Yep.
Actually,
you're not necessarily being subsidized.
Not just paying for it. The mode of payment is equivalent to the rent that you paid.
It's rent to own.
Yes. So, but the question that I want to ask, now this is my take on this matter. You rightly put it when when you say that they are trying to solve a problem that hasn't been identified, and I'm in agreement with you, because did they bother to find out how many Kenyans actually want to own houses?
Yeah.
Did they bother to find out how much Kenyans are willing to spend in order to own a house if they want to? Or better still, did they bother to find out what Kenyans think about housing and what it is they feel that ought to be the way forward? Unless we're assuming we know better than them and we can suggest to them what it is that they want.
And the numbers being used, at least the numbers that are piercing, and this is where I say this idea has not been thought through. It has not been thought through.
I think it has been thought through. I think it has been thought through by those who want to implement it, but in the absence of what I've just said.
Precisely, because you cannot think through from a supply side, because then you'll end up with the same glut that we have right now. You see, if the mechanism is for ownership, what else you at the end people will actually, and you're already saying, by the way, if you will not own, and we've talked about that there are instruments that we have already that would solve the problem, especially for affordable housing. Because these same people who you are targeting for affordable housing, who have an income, also make a contribution to NSSF. Some of them make a contribution to private retirement benefit schemes. As we talk, there has been a proposal, I think it should be lying in Parliament or somewhere thereabout, of how can you use pension funds as collateral for home ownership.
For more, yep.
No, it's there. So it's not like there are no instruments for this affordability discussion.
But the Retirement Benefits Authority, we had, God rest his soul in peace, the CEO here, and he did tell us the very thing you're saying, that they have come up.
It's already in operation, actually.
Yes, exactly. That you actually can use your retirement benefits as collateral for the very same thing that you're saying.
Okay, unless it's not been fully operationalized, because
It's
some schemes still do not.
Some schemes still do not recognize
that.
But you see, what I hear, Dr. Rugo, is there's a lot of English that's been thrown into this housing story. Everybody coming up, those who are saying, yes, it's working, English. Those who are saying, yes, it's not working, more English. Bottom line, it's in the finance bill. It has been reduced from 3% to 1.5%. There's something else that has happened here. That is the use of the word from fund to levy. What would that mean? If you stopped saying that this is a contributory scheme fund, a mandatory contributory fund into a levy,
First of all,
dynamics would change?
The language all along has never been anything to do with a contributory scheme. If anything, that's what people have been pushing for. They've been saying, if this is for my good, let it be made a contributory scheme.
Voluntary.
Willing buyer, willing seller.
It's a mandatory contributory scheme. Just like
somebody
NHIF.
call it a national chama.
Just like NHIF.
Just like if you were to argue from the point of a levy, a levy is charged on somebody who is consuming that good. Yeah. So technically, at consumption. So technically, if you're going to make it a levy, then you have to have assured me I am actually getting the house. So it cannot start with I cannot speculatively. It's not a gamble. It has to be that I am assured, and therefore what I'm being, it's like an off-plan arrangement.
Yeah.
It becomes an off-plan arrangement that I'm actually paying for the construction of the house.
That I will eventually.
So I think if that's a language, which I think is what people have said, then because if you think about all fuel levy, it's basically by the person who consumes, that particular, the toll charges, all those are levies.
You don't pay that levy if you don't consume the fuel.
Precisely. Yeah. So if there's a language that has changed, perhaps it's a good thing. Then government now tosses itself into competition, of course, with the private sector, and sees who, and I hope that then discussion moves back to the National Housing Corporation, because National Housing Corporation has really been missing in this whole conversation.
It's very interesting. They have actually.
Yet they are the ones who have the responsibility of it. But let's talk about other things that we have had.
Yeah, let's talk about.
We are also hearing
that. Let's take a break and then we come and talk about all these other things about, there's the exports, there's the tax on fuel as well, and all these others. Let's talk about them. It's 28 minutes to 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Dr. Abraham Rugo is the country manager for International Budget Partnerships Kenya. He's been involved in this budget-making process for many years. He presented on behalf of the Okoa Kenya. What do they call? Coalition? Okoa Uchumi. Yes, not Kenya. It's a Okoa Uchumi campaign. KRA, Dr. Rugo, is reminding you that you need to file your tax returns.
I did mine in March.
Of course, people like you already do these things. In March, If you're not like Dr. Rugo and you have not filed your tax returns, shauri yako. He's talking like this, him is already compliant. Go to itax.kra.go.ke. Have until the end of this month to make sure that you file your tax returns. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Bro, the game is about to start. Let's go. But just give me a minute, man. What's up? Who are you chatting with? I'm just filing my returns, then we bounce. Because I hope you remember the deadline is June 30th. The game will start, banner. Where? It doesn't take time. And yep, I'm done. That was fast. Where? Show me how you've done yours, because I don't want to pay any penalty. Just log into itax.kra.go.ke and file your returns. And if you don't know how to, just go to KRA's YouTube page and watch a tutorial. It's that easy. Allah, filing returns is easier than cooking. Easy peasy, say.
Kenya Revenue Authority reminds all PIN holders to file their 2022 tax returns on or before 30th of June 2023. For assistance, call 0711 099 999 or email callcenter@kra.go.ke. You can also visit any of the KRA service centers or any Huduma center countrywide. Kenya Revenue.
Okay, cloudy conditions. Sun might peek through in Nairobi, highs of 25 and lows of 15. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 15 in a mostly cloudy Nakuru. And it's sunny at 14 in Nyeri, highs of 24, and 22 will be the high. It's mostly sunny in Eldoret right about now. 23 and sunny conditions in Mombasa, highs of 29, and we'll see highs of 29 as well in a partly sunny Malindi at 24. 20 and mostly cloudy in Kisumu, highs of 27. And we'll go to highs of 26 in a sunny Kakamega at 18. It's 19 and cloudy cloudy in Kampala, highs of 27, and Dar es Salaam will see highs of 30 through a sunny Wednesday, currently at 23. It's clear at 5 in Johannesburg, highs of 18, and they'll come down to lows of 5. Looking into Lagos, we'll see highs of 30 today. It's mostly clear, currently at 26. It's partly cloudy at 24 in Kinshasa, highs of 30 and lows of 22.
Spice up your life.
Highway this morning, bits and bobs coming in from Githurai all the way through towards that Pangani underpass, and it's also still looking the same on Kiambu Road. The northern bypass feeding off towards Kiambu Road and coming off of Limuru Road, still pretty heavy as well. We're looking at Langata Road, all the way from beyond Uhuru Gardens out towards the junction of Raila Odinga Way, and then through to Aerodrome Road and into the city. That is starting to build up. Outer Ring is jam-packed. It doesn't matter what direction you're coming in from, moving very slowly, coming and going, it's packed. We're looking at North Airport Road as well, going towards the eastern bypass, some traffic there. And Njoroge Road, of course, that started early, still continues. Let's know what's going on where you are this morning, contending with Wednesday morning traffic. We should be able to get through without too much of a scratch. Let's talk on Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done.
Conversation continues. Dr. Abraham Rugo from the International Budget Partnerships is our guest this morning. We are looking at the recommended amendments to the finance bill. City.
You know, what I find interesting about this entire discussion is how a subject matter, which on the face of it and in principle is actually a good thing, the idea of enabling people to own a home, it's a good idea. And how then this good idea is presented without consulting this person who is supposed to benefit from it. And when they are consulted, it's after the decision has been made, whereas the consultation ought to have taken place before that decision was actually made. So that as you package this good idea, you package it with their needs and wants and ideas into it. And then it dovetails into something else that we don't talk about, and yet in my mind it's at the heart of the matter. Because we are always taxed, and taxes always increase. There's always a discussion about taxes, always. For the first time, most Kenyans are learning that every year there's always a finance bill. Yeah. They think this is the first time there's a finance bill, and many of them are rallying against saying, all these years we haven't had a finance bill. Why are we having a finance bill now? And I've been told it's always there, just that you don't get to hear about it. So I then have to ask the question, so what are we discussing here? And the discussion around trust comes, in my mind, to the center of it. And I ask, if there was more trust, would these debates would be as heated as this? And the answer, I think, is no.
Yeah, and you see, and the trust would have been a factor of what you have seen in the past. I don't think the trust deficit is because Kenyans just don't trust.
No. They've been given reason not to trust.
Yeah, very strong ones. And hopes have been dashed. I think that's what has really heated this discussion, because we have had schemes, conversations where this did not. But the bigger reason why Parliament insisted, in my opinion, to have the finance bill come together with the budget estimates is so that then they have a second chance, in my opinion, to rationalize whether what had been. So just 2 steps back. The budget making is a process, it's a cycle.
Yes.
And therefore, in February, there is a document called the Budget Policy Statement. The Budget Policy Statement has all these things we are discussing right now, but at a slightly higher level. That is where three things are normally stated. What are the intended spending at sector level? So sector, we are talking about health, agriculture and rural development, for instance, water, natural resources and environment. Natural resources and environment. Water. Those are sector level. But under them, they have several ministries, departments, and agencies. And then the second thing they do at that point, they also approximate how much are we going to collect as tax revenue. And finally, how much are we planning to borrow? So in other words, the deficit. So as far as February, then ministries retreat. There's also the amount allocated to the Parliamentary Service Commission and to the Judicial Service Commission and to counties as a block is also indicated at that point. Parliament approves the Budget Policy Statement. Why it approves the Budget Policy Statement is because then that is the guide of the ceiling. So nobody can budget over and above that ceiling unless there is some assurance of either extra funds, either through grants or a bill. So when they bring the budget estimates and the finance bill, what the finance bill basically is saying is that we committed to raise 2.5 trillion Kenya shillings in the coming financial year. So the finance bill then says, what are we going to adjust so that then, first of all, we raise what we raised last year. And that's why the finance bill is an amendment of different acts. Income Tax Act, VAT Act, Excise Duty Act, and other miscellaneous laws that I have to, that they require raising money for. And therefore, that's at this particular point. Then, Parliament is, and you had the discussion, the longer discussion yesterday in Parliament. They were actually approving the estimates of expenditure, and you heard how it goes. It's line by line. Line item by line item. So, of course, at program level. They don't go into the but they are at program level still slightly. But when you go under that, and we do analyze, it's, I think, a 2,000-something page document and on Excel, on PDF. And Parliament has to. But Parliament is not lost to the fact that, should not be lost to the fact that, as they do that, they are actually also discussing the finance raising measures. What's my point? If it's already clear that you're not likely to collect what you hoped to collect because you have seen certain things improve, developments in the economy, you've seen how the export market looks like, you've seen how the import market is looking like, you've seen food production and what that entails, the supply and what have you, and it's clear that now you're not likely. In fact, it was interesting because the two committees were sitting on the same floor. The Budget Appropriations Committee was sitting in the next room, and the Finance and National Planning Committee was sitting in the next room. And they were, of course, sharing. They were saying, they should be asking, what are you hearing? What are you hearing? So it's an opportunity to actually also address the expenditure side. So government cannot just make a claim that the only problem we have is a revenue problem. Our expenditure is rationalized. We are good. All we need is Kenyans to give us...
to raise the money.
Kenyans raise the money. And by the extra money we are talking about is that we are talking about raising an extra 400 billion. Our target for this year was 2.1 trillion, 210 shillings. I like to use numbers we all can relate to. The target for next year is 250 shillings. So the amount that the finance bill is trying to plug, and that does not include the housing. And I'm very curious why this housing fund found itself in the finance bill.
Where should it have found itself?
This is a miscellaneous matter.
It's not a revenue raising.
It's not a revenue raising matter because it's not the monies you are collecting from it are not contributing to what is budgeted for.
Unless the whole plan all along, and then going by, if the chairman of the finance committee did not have a slip of the tongue last night, he is quoted to have said that now they have thought about it and now made this fund because people asked for it to be. Now it's become a tax.
It's confusing.
If it wasn't a slip of the tongue, we'll see the report. We still haven't.
We are waiting for the report. I really want to see the actual. He tabled it last night, but we'll see it.
I'm
waiting to see the actual, and it's good we are having this conversation because I think the actual wording, because the housing fund and the projections thereof, I have not seen them in the budget documents in the way it's being framed. Because it's talking about, if you do the math, based on the initial figures, I'm here to do because I don't know how much is the total, the upper limit of this 1.5%. But if you worked with the initial 3%, the government was projecting, collecting about, putting into this fund about 100 billion per year, 108 billion, assuming everybody pays. You know, so you're talking about
everybody here is who exactly?
All the salaried individuals.
So including my farm worker who receives a salary from me.
Well, if they are registered in tax, they will pay. You will have to contribute. First, you need to contribute your part
as the employer.
I hope you submitted a memorandum because you are an employer in that case. I mean, if you argue it out that way, of course, majority, I think the people being targeted are those who make tax returns, the 3 million individuals who make tax returns. That's a story for another day. for another day.
Dr. Ruga, we've said, I mean, often that it's been months, it's been weeks really of confusion, and that if something that is true, if something is true, it is not very difficult to explain.
Yeah, and you don't need to remember.
And you don't need to remember what you said. But it seems that there's so much confusion, there's so much ambiguity. But the bottom line is that Kenyans are saying, here we are with a situation that's already depressed. We do not need anything that is going to come and add to that depression. So essentially, with these concessions that have been given on the finance clauses of the finance bill yesterday, have we seen this needle move in any direction? Really, really? We can say there's a reduction from 3% to 1.5%. We can say that some things have to remain because of 1, 2, 3. Have we really seen that this needle has moved at all? Or are we still where we were on Monday?
So you see the needle, it's moving in opposite directions, because on one hand you have, for instance, there's been a reduction from what we are seeing. There's an indicated reduction on digital tax, digital, I'm trying to get the actual words, from 15%. Initially it was 5%, now I see it's 3%. It's dancing somewhere there. So that has reduced. But then you have increased the export levy to 17%. And you increased the rental income tax, I think, from 10 to 15%. So in terms of, I think government is trying to make sure that the net
remains the same.
The net remains the same. The net remains the same. And you see, because of the interconnectedness of our economy and the nature of our incomes, it will still land, the actual pressure will still land on the same people. Because a big portion of our economy runs on salaried people with a regular income. It's you who has to pay your shamba guy, your house help. Then they go and purchase things from the economy. You know, you go and have your car washed. Then those guys who wash your car, then they are able to pay their rent. Then they are able. You see, the pressure. And that's why I said any salaried Kenyan runs a welfare system, you know, in one way or another, you know, medical bills and what have you. Two, and this is where I think the government needs to carefully listen. And I hope actually this will actually come to the floor of the House. Some of the ideas around, for instance, petroleum. We know that there is a tight space of how much, because I said of these 250 shillings we are planning to actually collect, 165 of that will go to debt payment. Hapo ndio tuko. So we know they're in a tight space. But why are they not willing to also delay their gratification and reduce on some of their expenditures are outside this, so that we say, can we take care of what must be taken care of, healthcare, education? Can we go slow on some of these other things so that we all, it cannot just be tightening of the belt on one side.
Right. Or be serious about fighting corruption, for example.
I am coming to that.
Okay.
Corruption. Simba Arati was again in a forum where His Excellency Mudavadi was also, it's a tax conference that is going on. I'm actually heading there from here. And one of the things he said is that if we don't deal with corruption, we are not going to make any progress.
Who said?
Simbarati.
The governor of
The
Kisii.
governor of Kisii.
Okay.
And he was saying, and basically, and this is not new because we've done the math, and I think we have, that math has been thrown everywhere, that by just dealing with the wastage and corruption that is currently there, you basically save yourself about 700 billion, which can then be spent. 700 billion is more than what you're trying to raise with the finance bill for next year. 700 billion is equivalent to what you're planning to borrow. And the cost of borrowing is going up. The bond that was just released last week, I think, the average rate is now at 15%. Ghana, which was where we are about 7, 8 years ago, is now borrowing at 24%. 24%. How will you repay? So before we get ourselves into almost a difficult situation, we have to address the expenditures, because the problem we are trying to deal with right now is not a revenue problem. I mean, you cannot continue living big, Eric, and then you come and tell me, Abraham, Bana, it's that I don't earn very well. If only I earned well, my struggles will end. The more you earn, the more you spend. 2, the tax collection has actually been rising year on year in Kenya. It's been rising. But now, and again, allow me to refer to Mdayori, he said many interesting things yesterday when he came to open the conference. He said that, tax has a point beyond which you cannot collect anything more. I was like, wow, that's very sound economics. I hope it is being applied.
He was implying we haven't reached that point yet.
And I worry that we are not yet at a point. Of course, there's a discussion to be held about increasing the base. And perhaps the way to increase the base is reducing the rate, so that you have more people paying kidogo. But you have more people.
Is it them paying, or you want a situation where you enhance the willingness of people to pay?
You, of course, have to. The willingness is by honoring the contract.
Yes.
By making sure services are provided.
Yes.
Because it does not make sense for me to pay tax and I still have to take care of my healthcare.
And my garbage.
And my garbage. And my security. Including installing CCTVs. And you have seen what they have done. Yes. So I think for me is that the conversation cannot be held only one way. Kenyans don't want to pay. They are already paying. As we talk here, we are paying tax.
Yep.
But let me talk about the VAT discussion on fuel. I think this is perhaps the one thing that there is a lot of adamancy from not changing it. And I think it will go as it is. But I think it is important to appreciate the replica effect. Or rather, what do you call it?
The repo.
The repo effect. Anything touching on fuel has on the rest of the economy. Especially on cost of living. It's that it affects production, it affects transportation, it affects a lot of other things that are connected, and therefore what does that cost is actually, you see what 8% is doing. Now imagine now moving it to 16%.
It's connected to everything.
It's connected to everything. Again there, perhaps there could have been a conversation. And the argument, by the way, it's very interesting. The argument is not necessarily an amount argument. The argument the government has been making is a standardization argument.
Yeah.
We are doing this so that we don't have some people paying 8%. Yeah. Why don't you reduce then everything to 8%? Why go for the higher?
I have another argument. For the you see, so fuel was going at a certain price at the pump a couple of years ago.
Correct.
Like 60 bob less. Couple of years ago, all right? It went up. And we still continue to consume. As it was going up, the cost of living has gone up and everything. But people have adjusted. So you as a government, just consider yourself OPEC and increase the price by an extra 8%. At least you collect that. People are still going to consume.
But how much are you collecting?
8% more.
You know, those who understand these things, Eric will tell you, there's what they call a point of diminishing returns. You get to a point where...
We haven't reached that point.
No, I think we have.
That is what
Eric,
Mudavadi is saying, there's a point.
Yeah, so
but we haven't reached the point.
But you can see already the constraint you have with, and you see, by the way, because of all that we have talked about, the end game is that people's incomes are not improving.
Yep.
And even people are being laid off in terms of jobs.
Yep.
So you don't see an expansion in the income market, or in the job market, as it were. And because you do not see more people being employed, then therefore you're saying that actually you don't have, because tax is a factor of income. You pay taxes, you consume goods and services because
you have an income.
Yeah. What are we seeing in the current financial year? We are targeted to raise 210 shillings. As at end of April, we had done 1.5. I don't think there is magic that will raise 600 billion. The extras, not in the next 14 days.
We will not hit our target.
Will not hit our target.
Okay.
Then you say, no, you guys, relax.
Let's increase the target.
Let's shoot this thing by another 400 billion. In essence, if we raise 1.8 or 1.9, in essence, you have raised your target by another 700 billion.
Yep.
Eric, 700 billion is the amount you would save by dealing with corruption.
But let me ask you this question, Dr. Arya. You know, we keep talking about incomes, the raising of incomes, and yet, in my mind, the discussion ought to be the value proposition that income represents. If you keep increasing what I earn and it keeps buying me less, how exactly have you helped me?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You have to look at this from all angles. One, public services. You see, all these countries that we keep quoting about how they pay a lot of tax and what have you, you will never open a tap and lack water. I studied in one of them, and we had a blackout once in 4 years when I was there.
Once?
Once.
How long?
And it lasted 5 seconds.
There you go.
And it was announced 2 weeks before.
You were told?
We were told.
There'll be a blackout.
On this day, there will be a power interruption because there's something we are doing, and it varied. It was not even more than a minute per se. Ours, I think we only noticed it for like five or so seconds. It wasn't long. The point is, at no one day, and when I talked to my colleagues who we were doing a PhD together with, when they told me some of the taxation levels, when they put everything together, it was coming to about 42%. But there's no day the bus was late. There is no day garbage was not collected.
Public services.
Public services are functional.
Yeah.
And therefore, in a country like that, they complain, of course. It's Germany, so they complain about many things, including the bus is late by a couple of seconons. At least it's coming.
At least there's a bus.
There's a bus, and it's gonna come at the end of the day. But you don't have to make noise, because the thing has passed. Well, I found some of their problems very, very, very unrelatable.
Very interesting.
Unrelatable. Then I came back to Tomboya, and I knew I was back home. But the point I'm saying is that you cannot make a case only for revenue if your expenditure is not providing for citizens the goods and services that they are expecting.
That actually is their right, and the very reason why they pay taxes.
Precisely, precisely. And if that does not happen, then of course, then there are other things you will have to deal with, including the cost of food. I support the idea: don't subsidize consumption, subsidize production, and make sure that the subsidies are actually transferred to consumers, because that's the only way they get to gain. Therefore, you have to look at it from the different. And therefore, it cannot just be that the reason why we are not providing more is because we don't have more money. Already, as we talk, there is money available. There is money being appropriated. There is money for education. There is money for schools, for hospitals, for different. Why is it that you're not seeing that kind of publics? And therefore, I have to do my math and ask, if I'm still going to provide for myself, then let me work out how much does it cost me to provide for my entire this welfare system that I run. How much does it cost me? And then I net it off.
And then, yes. Makes sense. It makes sense. There's always that question of, so why do I need the government if I'm going to do all these things
for myself?
Yeah.
So that has to be worked on, and I hope that will be a central conversation But as parliamentarians receive this report today morning and start debating it, I hope they will remember that while on one hand the duality of citizenship, while on one hand you are a policy maker, on the other hand you are also a consumer
of
that policy.
That's true. Dr. Rugo, always a pleasure having you around. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you. Dr. Abraham Rugo is the country manager at International Budget Partnerships Kenya. He's been our guest. Keep it here for more conversations. It's 8 a.m. Time for the news.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Oseto. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has appealed to members of parliament not to mutilate the Finance Bill 2023 because doing so will set back government plans on development. Speaking in Kirinyaga, Gachagua asked the legislators to vote in favour for the bill, saying it is good for Kenyans. Gachagua urged Kenyans who are unemployed not to listen to those who try to mislead them on the Finance Bill 2023. The Finance Bill has come under sharp criticism from leaders and Kenyans. Now, the Kanini Kega-led Jubilee Party has now officially withdrawn from the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. Through a notice, Kega indicated that the Jubilee Party no longer wants to be part of the Azimio outfit. The move comes barely a month after the Jeremiah Kioni-led faction held a national delegates conference that kicked out the Kenya Kwanza allied Jubilee members of parliament from the party, a meeting that the Kega-led faction rubbished as inconsequential and illegal. Jubilee has recently been on the center of discussions, with Azimio reading a hidden government hand in interfering with the internal issues that continue to bedevil the former ruling party. So intense have the wrangles been, so that retired head of state Uhuru Kenyatta had been compelled to come out of his retirement in an open defiance to the law requiring him to exit active politics. Now, Kilifi MCAs have removed the County Public Service Board chairperson Rose Ngoaf over gross misconduct and incompetence. Members of the County Assembly also removed 3 other board members in a unanimous vote. Those axed in a verdict relayed by Assembly Clerk Michael Ngala are Raymond Muramba Mweni, Alphonse Mrima and Patience Mkambe Mwangiri. Ngala said the removal of the 4 was conducted pursuant to Section 58(5) of the County Government Act 2012 and Standing Order 63A of the County Assembly of Kilifi Standing Orders. And detectives have gunned down 4 individuals believed for being behind a string of armed robberies in Machakos, Mombasa and Kwale counties over the few months. The Directorate of Criminal Investigation says the suspects were shot dead following a fierce exchange of fire with the detectives in Kilifi's Takaungu area. According to the DCI, the suspects disregarded orders to surrender and instead engaged in a shootout with the pursuing detectives. The team consisted of highly skilled personnel from the Elite Crime Research and Intelligence Bureau, along with marksmen from the DCI Operations Branch. And 8 officers from the KDF Special Forces lost their lives after the vehicle they were traveling in set off an improvised explosive device at Badai area along the border of Lamu and Garissa counties. Reports indicate that the incident occurred when the officers, who all died on the spot, were patrolling the area. The bodies of the deceased officers have since been recovered, but their identities have yet to be established owing to the magnitude of the explosion, which reportedly damaged their bodies beyond recognition. And the judiciary has constituted a team to unlock stalemate with the Law Society of Kenya over the provision of the pro bono services. The judiciary's Chief Registrar Anna Madi stated that a committee comprising representatives from the judiciary and the Law Society of Kenya will help address the concerns and challenges over the funding of legal aid. The decision to establish the committee followed correspondence received from judges, judicial officers and LSK branches highlighting the difficulties faced by advocates in facilitating proper briefs and pro bono services. And Energy and Petroleum Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir has pledged that the government is deliberating possible ways of reducing the cost of petroleum products to attain feasible solutions that will benefit all Kenyans. Speaking during a consultative forum held by the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Energy with the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum at its Sagas Churchill said that they are working on the scrutiny of internally generated revenue and measures to reduce the cost of petroleum products. The CS also said they are discussing reconciling the budget and reporting processes. This, he said, will help to look into the challenges and concerns that are being raised and be able to sort them out, as well as have full disclosure finances allocated to the ministry. And the National Land Commission has announced the appointment of Kabale Tache Arerwa as the Chief Executive Officer following a rigorous recruitment process. Kabale, who previously served as the Director of Human Resources Management and Administration at NLC, emerged as the top candidate out of the 7 shortlisted for the position. Gershom Otachi Bomanwa, the chairperson of NLC, expressed his satisfaction with the recruitment process. This is News. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
A few minutes after 8 o'clock, and we're looking at traffic in different parts of the city this morning. It's heavy coming off the northern Airport North Road is already looking at it, really busy now, going towards the Eastern Bypass. Langata Road is giving this morning all the way from Catholic University, very heavy, then going out towards Langata Road, and we're seeing that coming heavy towards Raila Odinga Way, and then out on to Aerodrome and then Uhuru Highway. All right, traffic also coming from the Thika Superhighway, and we're looking at it also then heavy coming off of Kiambu Road and Limuru Road as well. Spice FM KE on Twitter, talk to us this morning, and let's keep things moving.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room,
Indeed,
the only way to start your day.
8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a Situation Room. Thank you very much for keeping it locked. We're live on Spice FM. We are on KTN Home, and we are live streaming the show as we always do on YouTube and Facebook. Have you gone onto your App Store or Play Store and downloaded the 911 app? We've been telling you about it, and it's important for you to actually consider it. Think about it this way. You are in a situation that requires some immediate rescue. Say your car's broken down. Say your car is stuck somewhere and you basically need rescue. So 911 is a company that offers these rescue services. And they're saying now you can actually get our support by getting onto the app and then raising the issue on the app. From our call center, we will be able to see you and your concerns. And then what are we going to do? Once we see your concerns, we will dispatch a team to come and sort you out. And this is what happens with 911. Okay, so just go to Google Play Store, Apple App Store, and download the 911 Group app. It's your companion, and you should have it everywhere you go. At the same time, as I'm telling you all these things, KRA reminds you that you have until the end of this month to do the thing that you ought to do, which is to file your tax returns. Okay? So this is a conversation that we'll be continuing with in a few days' time. Continue remembering to file your returns, please. And if you find somebody, a friend, a colleague, a comrade, a family relative, please remind them, file your returns by the 30th of June. Because if you don't do that, any minute thereafter starts attracting penalties. And it's not a good thing. Okay? It's not a good... You don't want to do that. It's a very simple thing. Just go to itax.kra.go.ke, log into your account, file your returns. Let's talk about property ownership now, and we are going to have that conversation with Mivida Holmes. Yeah? It's a big one, you know.
It is.
Hey. And as we continue thinking about having the conversations and what we're going to do and what we're going to discuss, Samuel Kariuki is the Chief Executive Officer of Mivida, and he's our guest. Good morning, Samuel.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
This man called Mr. C.T. Muga has the day's proverb. Every day he gives us a proverb from a different, every week proverbs from a different country. These week's proverbs are from Zambia. And you said the president of Zambia is?
Well, he has a rather lengthy name.
Hakainde
Hichilema.
Thank you very much.
Hichilema.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, since you're going to mention what well mentioned is VP, Mutale Nalumango.
Mutale Nalumango.
Yeah, that's his VP.
All right. Okay.
You cannot accuse them of not having African-sounding names. No. Don't start a fight just because your companion is strong.
Don't start a fight just because your companion is strong.
Yes.
Samuel,
Yes.
when you hear that proverb, does it resonate with you?
Well, the companion might walk away.
I do.
And you'll have to do the fight. You'll have to fight on your own.
What do you think the Zambians are saying? Beyond that, just the obvious literal meaning.
Yeah. I don't know. Peace? Well, it has nothing to do with property for sure.
Or maybe it does.
Maybe it does.
Or maybe it does. But it's probably just that. Don't just start a fight for whatever reason. I guess one would say my companion looks like he can fight, so I feel secure to do whatever. But he may just literally walk away.
In your line of business, a companion would be, say, a financial institution. And for you, a fight may be putting up a development. So, do you start that particular fight because your companion is there, or don't you?
I do start it because Muga has some money. And if I know Muga has some money, for sure, I'll build something. Or he looks moneyed. Then I'll definitely give him a brochure. And the brochure is a fight in itself.
Bas, touche us.
Someone introduce us to Mivida.
Thank you. So Mivida means, Mivida is a joint venture between two global corporates. First of which is Actis. Actis is a UK-based private equity fund manager. Been in Kenya for many years. I would bet every one of you, every listener has interacted with an Actis investment one way or the other. Most likely you take coffee at Java. Java is owned by Actis. If you've been to the Garden City Mall, it's developed and owned by Actis. If you've been to Junction Mall, it was developed by Actis. We exited some time back. If you happen to be at Radisson Blue, Fairview Hotel in Upper Hill, Holiday Inn at Two Rivers, those are Actis properties. Or if you take milk, Actis is a part owner of a milk company in Kenya. So you do interact with an Actis portfolio company one way or the other. And I keep saying, if you don't do any of those, certainly you use electricity. And Kipeto Wind Power is an Actis portfolio company. So chances are then tonight you switch on your lights. Part of that energy is coming from an Actis-owned company.
Wow.
So Actis is a major investor in Kenya, is a major investor in Africa, major investor in Asia and Latin America, emerging markets. All right. Then Shaponji Palonji is a 150-year-old
Shaponji
Palonji. It's a complicated name, but not as complicated as the Zambian names.
It competes favorably.
Shaponji Palonji. We ran a campaign to test the pronunciation of the company.
Oh, yeah? How did that one go?
No, not that well. Yeah. So it's a 150-year-old conglomerate based in India, one of India's biggest. 150-year-old in construction and real estate. In India, Actis and Shaponji partner in affordable and mid-market housing. and therefore they were seeking to replicate that in Africa, starting from Kenya.
Okay.
So Mivida then is, the result of that initiative by both Actis and Shaponji. And I think what it brings to Kenya is much needed institutionalization of real estate. Because real estate in Africa mostly, outside of the more developed market, has been a mom and pop kind of thing. It's you and I get an eighth of a plot, do a few flats, and that has been the primary supply.
Yeah.
So you could argue it's unregulated, doesn't meet certain standards. Largely, majority of us, even middle class, would live in, I would say, premises which are lacking in what I would call decent amenities that should be available, in for a decent living, if I put it like that. I live somewhere where I like the sun. Everybody should always be out in the sun for a few minutes. But for me to get the sun on a weekend, I have to get into the parking and sit on the cab block.
Why?
That's the only place I can.
Why?
Does this place not have windows?
No, see, you need to be outside. You need to be outside.
Outdoors.
Yes, you need to be outdoors.
So the only outdoor space available for you is the parking space.
Is the parking
space.
Right.
And this is in a high-end neighborhood.
You're paying some
I'm
good
paying,
money.
I'm paying some good money. So that tells you, that gap in institutional quality supply of real estate that has certain basic, minimum level of decent amenities. So maybe that comes to solve that. And I say it's a unique proposition because it's financial capital partnering with technical capital of these two giants, and that's Mevida for you.
So, I hear you saying then that it's solution oriented, whereby there are issues within housing, there are issues within real estate that then you've come in to then be able to solve. What would you say are then some of these challenges that are faced by folks who are either renting or buying that you're coming in to then plug? What are some of those challenges that we face?
Okay. I think the way to look at the challenges is to look at both what we call the supply side and the demand side of the housing value chain. When you talk of supply side, it's exactly that, the supply of homes, developers acquiring land and developing homes. When you talk of the demand side, it is you and I buying a home or renting a home. On the supply side, then the question is, what's the current situation on supply, and especially of affordable, decent quality housing? I think the figures that are often quoted by both the public and private sector is we have a deficit of about 2 million units. And annualized, that is, we need a supply of 250,000 units per year to meet that deficit, which is currently growing.
In the country or in Nairobi?
Well, I would say the country, but of that, the bulk could be Nairobi, not surprisingly. Of the 250,000, the quoted supply at the moment is 50,000, of which only 1,000 would qualify as affordable. And I suppose the way to look at
supply is 50 units.
The current supply is 50,000 units.
50,000 units
out of a requirement of 250,000 units. So it shows you there is a significant supply-demand gap.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
You've said then, out of that, only 1,000 are affordable.
Would qualify as affordable.
Would qualify as affordable. What are the markers for this affordability that we're talking about? So that before you then...
That's a very good question. Thank you. Because, again, when you talk of affordability, one must ask, is it about affordable rental? Is it about affordable ownership? I like to think of affordable rental as a need today. If you're thinking of human needs and human wants, to me an affordable rental, decent rental is a need. Affordable ownership, one could say, is a want. I would want to affordably own a home, but I do need an affordable, decent home I can today rent. And I appreciate Nairobi specifically, about 90% of us are tenants. And it's going to be so for a while. So I see the need today as affordable, supply of affordable rental. I would define as, affordable rental, if I just take the government's own definition, anybody who earns up to 150,000 shillings gross qualifies for the affordable housing program. If I earn 150K, I probably pay 45,000 or so in taxes and deductions, so I have a rough 100 to spare. We have a benchmark of 30% that says don't spend more than 30% of your net on housing, which then caps my affordable rental at 30,000. 30,000 probably your mid income or lower middle income kind of a person. It certainly does not address the social housing aspect of it, and I know they call that the hustler segment of the population. So if I earn up to 50,000 and maybe take home 45,000, I can't spend more than 15,000 on a house.
You should not.
You should not spend more than. The question today is, what decent home can I today rent at 15,000?
For a family.
For a family.
That's
for a
not
family,
a studio we are talking about.
Not a studio. This is a family. So if I'm, there are certain professions, I don't want to mention them, that earn up to that level. And yes, so if I have a wife and I have 2 children, I definitely need, and a DSQ. I probably need a 2-bedroom.
Yep.
And that might be a stretch as well, because if it's a boy and a girl, and a servant who is supporting us, and this boy and girl are about to become teenagers,
you need each of them to be in their own bedroom.
Absolutely. So for 15,000, probably you will struggle today, especially closer to CBD, to find such a home. And you could argue there's even a segment, even 50,000 and probably above, there's even a segment below that. So there's a segment you would call the social housing segment, and social housing can only be supplied by the government, can only be rental. That's not somewhere the private sector can play. So, in short, then, to answer your very good question, you have the social segment that is really a government mandate. You have this segment between 50,000 to, between 20,000 to 50,000 in need of decent affordable housing, probably can afford up to 15. Then the other group that qualifies up to 30,000 shillings. That probably meets the formal definition of affordable housing.
Everything that I've heard you say, Samuel, points to a problem.
Yes.
Because if we just go with that argument, that basic argument of don't spend more than 30% of your net income on housing, then you have moved a majority of people who live in Nairobi and they're paying rent out of this bracket. Then also we talk about the supply side, and you've said we have a deficit of about 250,000 units per year. That's new homes being constructed, getting into the market every year. We are only doing about 50,000. So we have a shortfall of 200 every year. We had an economist here, and we've had economists talking to us in the last couple of days, and they're saying, in fact, in Nairobi, what we have is an oversupply of houses.
Look at it this way. 60% of, as a direct result of that, 60% of Nairobians live in informal settlements. 60%. And even those who live in what would not be informal settlements, so permanent material, for example, privately owned, Nairobi is one gigantic, if I may say that, sprawl of unplanned developments. There's a time way back, for the younger generation, they may not know that, there's a time this musician called Coolio came to Nairobi. I think I was in high school then. And his observation of Nairobi was that Nairobi is one big slum. Oh no, he called it one big ghetto. Of course, we may have had our own feelings then, but generally, if you observe,
we'll see him when we get back.
But if you drive outside of the so-called middle class neighborhoods and see where true Nairobians live, regardless of which road you take, the reality is you see this sprawl of very unplanned. Yes, there are flats, yes, but it's a sprawl of very unplanned development. If you get into any one of them, no standard from a sizing perspective, no lighting, and no infrastructure at all. So you could argue by any standard, they're also informal settlements. Yeah. And majority of Nairobians then live in those kind of environments. And I'll take one estate, take Pipeline Estate. It by our definition, it's not a slum, right?
Yeah.
It's a concrete sort of development, 4+ floors, where some go up to 10 floors illegally. But by any definition, that cannot be formal supply of housing. So that's where, those kind of estates is where majority of Nairobians live. If you ever drive along Thika Road, just past Garden City, and you start observing these, it's called Zimmerman, I think. Just that whole expanse of Zima, Githurai, Kahawa West, that's the character of Nairobi city generally. And when I look at that, then it's what speaks best to lack of supply of affordable housing. Ignore the social housing. Lack of social housing leads to slamification. But lack of affordable housing is then leading to this, sprawl of mom and shop unregulated flats. So I think it would be disingenuous for anyone to argue that Nairobi has an oversupply. Certainly it doesn't have. Not when it comes to definition of just basic, decent, quality housing.
Okay.
Yes.
So all of the real estate mushrooming that we've seen over the last 10 years, I mean, there was a time here we talked about the real estate, this bubble, whether it was imagined or real, that we said it was going to burst at some point, because everywhere you looked, there were, there was real estate popping up, right? So are we saying essentially, Samuel, that the houses that have come up are, number one, not affordable, number two, they are not fulfilling the need. So even if you look around and you say, well, there's an estate, there's another one, there are blocks of flats, they're empty, then there's a reason why they're empty. Are we saying then that this supposed solution that was coming in was actually not fulfilling the need that Nairobi has?
Okay, an excellent question. I think if you look at the way the country has developed post 2000, before 2002, there were, by modern standards, minimal development of any scale coming up. We all remember how the economic situation was pre-2003. When the government changed, and a number of economic policies were put and initiatives were put in place, there was then this very, not sudden, but, gradual but rapid emergence of a middle class. And what developers then did was to address that emerging middle class and upper middle class, and hence the significant supply of housing in Kilimani, Lavington, Kileleshwa, and such like estates. But they were addressing that middle class to the upper middle class. And yes, there was this talk of a bubble burst. I would probably see it as a trend towards saturation. Because today, if I look at the segment that I would call prime residential, there will always be pockets of demand, but one could argue it's saturated. Nobody's going to do 1,000 high-end homes today. But there will be pockets where I'm doing 100, 200 also. The middle, if I may call it that word, like that, so it's a mid-market sort of segment that will constantly have some demand to some extent, because yes, there's always a middle class that's emerging, and then there's an aspirational segment that's looking to move from one sort of standard of living to another as incomes grow. But on affordable housing, just because of the nature, the character of returns there, of course, prime residential has excellent returns, very high returns. There's a time Nairobi and Mombasa were deemed to have the highest returns of real estate globally because of that prime residential. And even today, Nairobi is still ranked from a return perspective a top 15 city globally from a return on prime residential. Big surprise.
Wow.
But on the affordable side, obviously, the return character from an investor perspective is slightly different. And if it's not surprising, then investors at the turn of the millennium would have focused on the prime residential and the mid-market. And that meant then you didn't have significant institutional supply of affordable housing, what we'd call affordable housing, addressing these rental ranges of up to, for now, I'd probably say up to 45,000 case. So to the extent then that you're talking of this deficit of 2 million in major cities, the question of saturation for that segment, or the question of a bubble burst, to me does not arise. What you do have is a supply and demand mismatch for some of the reasons that we are discussing.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we look at this, which Mivida is interested in, obviously, bridging the gap between quality and affordability, why then do we not I mean, it would seem as though if you were going to go into this commercial venture of putting up housing, that you would want to then fill the need, unless this is information that not everybody knows. Maybe those in the real estate sector do not know that the problem is lack of affordable housing in these areas. But if you did know that, then why would you not then go into whereby folks then can either buy or rent housing that is commensurate to their income?
Okay.
I am confused.
Okay. No, good observation. I would say, in the last couple of years, as the more prime residential becomes saturated, you are then seeing institutional developers getting very interested, not just in mid-market, but on the affordable housing space. And affordable housing is becoming what I would call an investment-grade asset that an institutional investor, backed by institutional capital, is looking to invest in. And hence, for example, even though we are backed by a global institution, our return or the investment return requirements from our shareholders, of course, would be expected to be on the higher side. We do see, based on the addressable market for affordable housing, and the depth of the demand, we do see it as an investment opportunity, that one can structure an investment opportunity that meets the return requirements of investors, but also addresses that need for impact. If you think about 2 million units, even if you cumulatively take what both the government and private sector are doing today, you are nowhere near addressing that. And not just in Nairobi. Think about, I drive around counties a lot, and I notice, because of devolution in the last 10 or so years, even counties are themselves, at least the major counties, becoming, economic centers in their own right. And therefore, in a maybe not remote, if you drive somewhere far in far in central Kenya or far in eastern Kenya, you will now see again the mushrooming of flats, meaning there's a rental demand that's now growing even in those sort of counties. And therefore, I would expect this 2 million deficit we are talking about to even grow. You have more people leaving university this year, coming to join the labor force. They will need a decent housing. So it will continue.
Most of them are basically moving into the urban areas.
Most of them are moving to the urban areas. That's where the job opportunities are. So yes, to your question, there is an investment opportunity in affordable housing. And the story there is great. Not only are we talking about returns from an investor perspective, but there is an impact. There is an impact in addressing urban and social problems by we playing in the affordable housing space.
Samuel, let's take a break. When we come back, I want us to engage a little bit on this affordable housing and the affordability, because you already have put a case here that very many of the houses that we see, particularly in Nairobi, are beyond what should be affordable to a majority of people. So what is it that the industry is doing to address that? It's 28 minutes to 9. Our guest this morning is Samuel Kariuki. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Mivida Homes. Now, if you've been down Garden City, you've seen Mivida Homes, and he'll tell us exactly where. If you've been down Wayaki Way, you've also seen Mivida Homes. Someone will tell us exactly where and the kind of developments that they have in all these areas. Someone, have you filed your tax returns?
Yes, I have.
In March?
Way before the deadline.
Everybody who's been here has just been telling, I did that in March. Nobody has done it in June or May.
Well,
City is doing it next week.
I did in May.
Actually, I did it last week.
You did it last week. City has done it in June. Remember to file your tax returns. Just go to itax.kra.go.ke. It's important, and KRA reminds you to do that. I know, yes, we are talking about Garden City and Mivida, but we also remember of a property that's been there for 40 years, and that's Sarit Center. 40 years.
What are you doing between 1 and 2 p.m. today? I would suggest you go down to Sari Center and look for Ginkgo. Ginkgo takes you through a journey of the senses with a driving story inspired by the Asian influence. The restaurant offers a luxurious setting in both its design and its decor. Dishes are family style, featuring a sushi and cocktail bar with a pan-Asian menu, bringing a unique experience on Asian classics. It's on the first floor of Sarit, your city, Karuna Road, entrance next to the DTB Bank. And why am I saying you do this? Because Sarit Centre is celebrating 40 years and says spend 2,040 shillings and you can do it here and you can spin the wheel and get a prize of a cruise, a car, vouchers for meals. And right here on Spice FM, we're also saying celebrate Sarit at 40 and tell us where you would spend 2,040 shillings and you could win a hamper at the end of it all.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Bro, the game is about to start. Let's go. But just give me a minute, man. Malize. What's up? Who are you chatting with? I'm just filing my returns, then we bounce. Because I hope you remember the deadline is June 30th. The game will start, banner. Where? It doesn't take time. And yep, I'm done. That was fast. Where? Show me how you've done yours, because I don't want to pay any penalty. Just log into itax.kra.go.ke and file your returns. And if you don't know how to, just go to KRA's YouTube page and watch a tutorial. It's that easy. Allah, filing returns is easier than cooking. Easy peasy, say.
Kenya Revenue Authority reminds all PIN holders to file their 2022 tax returns on or before 30th of June 2023. For assistance, call 0711 099 999 or email callcenter@kra.go.ke. You can also visit any of the KRA service centers or any Huduma center countrywide. Kenya Revenue Authority. Tulipe ushuru, tujitegemee.
All right, mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning. The sun is peeking through at some point. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 15. It's cloudy at 17 in Nakuru, highs of 25, and we'll see highs of 24 in a mostly cloudy Nyeri at 16, 15, and mostly sunny in Eldoret, highs of 22 and lows of 13. And looking into a mostly sunny Mombasa at 23, it will go to highs of 30. 30 will also be the high in Malindi, where it's sunny at 25. Mostly cloudy at 21 in Kisumu, highs of 27, and 26 will be the high in a mostly sunny Kakamega at 19. It's 19 and cloudy in Kampala, highs of 27, and 29 will be the high in a partly sunny Dar es Salaam at 25. Slightly warmer at 6 degrees now in Johannesburg, highs of 18, and Lagos is cloudy at 26, 25, highs of 30. 30 will also be the high in a mostly cloudy Kinshasa at 23.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
On Langata Road this morning, it's going all the way past Uhuru Gardens through towards the city. As you get towards the junction of Raila Odinga Way, it's gonna give some reprieve as some folks getting off there, going towards Aerodrome. Uhuru Highway not looking too bad, but as you get to the junction of Haile Selassie, it's going to slow down a little bit. Kiambu Road has done very well. Round of applause. Just a little bit of traffic as you approach Muthaiga Square. And it's also starting to dwindle on the Thika Superhighway. Folks on the Northern Bypass have said, no way, we like this traffic, we're staying. Well, hopefully that will get better. If you don't have to be on the Northern Bypass, do not. The Thika Superhighway not looking too bad. There's an option for you to get into the city. North Airport Road also reducing in traffic as you go towards the Eastern Bypass. Traffic not too poorly for a Wednesday. Let's keep an eye and see about half hour what it looks like. Spice FM, KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
All right.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Samuel Kariuki, the CEO of Mivida. This is a real estate development company. The big boys are in town, right? So we're talking about, two partners who are big globally. Actis, a global public equity fund, and Shaponji Palonji, 150-year-old construction and real estate company off of India, coming together and forming Mivida in Kenya and developing the houses that you're developing. You talked about affordability. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is bridging that gap, as you say, between what is quality and what is affordable. But at the same time, you've also told us, if you look at the average incomes of Kenyans and then the average amount that those average Kenyans are paying for rent, if they're in urban areas, particularly in Nairobi, they're paying above what is advisable for them to pay. So that means the issue of, even though they are able to pay this, it means that something else is being affected. So affordability is a big issue. Why are the houses that expensive in Nairobi for rent? Why is rent so high?
Okay. I think one way to look at it is what are the supply side constraints to developers. If you think of supply side, then you start with the beginning point, which is land. Is there adequate serviced land that is affordable in areas near workplaces, near the CBDs, near the urban nodes? The answer is that is one of the biggest challenges. On average, land in Nairobi is what I would call the Nairobi metropolitan area is 130 million plus. That in itself is the beginning of the problem. Then you need development finance, to finance the project. Again, development finance in Kenya is expensive. The cost of construction in itself, I think it averages, just the hard cost on itself averages from 56,000 to almost 70,000 shillings per square meter. That is expensive, and a good portion of that is because of the imported materials. Of course, then susceptible to global economic shocks and the forex that we are currently suffering. So the cost of inputs, being the land, being the funding, being the construction cost itself, then renders the final cost of a unit relatively expensive if we are following the right procedure. Obviously, we talked about these mom and pop shops who cut a lot of corners, who then are able to rent, develop at a particular cost or price, and then are able to rent what looks like at an affordable rate. The reality then is whatever product they are availing to the market.
There's a compromise.
There's a significant compromise.
Right.
I know you have friends who, if they were to invite you to their places, the best you can do is take an Uber to very close to the neighborhood. You can't drive in there.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of Nairobi. I do have those kind of friends. I have friends all over. That's the reality of it. So I would then say the overall cost of bringing, developing or producing a house is then what speaks to the affordability. What then the beauty of being an institutional developer is, one, you have access to capital. In our case, when we launched this platform, we received a 12 billion shillings commitment from both the financiers, which is to be applied towards affordable housing and mid-market housing. Because of the scale, you are then able to leverage the scale to manage your supply chain in such a way that you reduce your total cost of developing houses to a certain level, to a practical certain level. And for that reason, then we are able to launch to the market the kind of product we have launched on the affordable side. If you look at today, Mivida is developing, even within Garden City. Garden City is a high-end master planned development. You do have houses there that, sometimes are being sold for 40 million. Today we have houses selling for between 17 to 27 million on the high-end side. We have mid-market selling for a completed project, selling for about between 8 to 16 million for 1 to 3 bedroom. But in that context, we are bringing an affordable piece to it so that it's a proper mixed income community. And we've introduced houses at price points from 2 million up to 6 million for a studio 1, 2. So let's look at that contextually from an affordability perspective. We've introduced an interesting product, which is, I would probably call it a hybrid between a long-term payment plan and a tenant purchase scheme. It's a hybrid. If I buy today that apartment, the studio apartment, at 2.1 million shillings, I pay a 30% deposit over the construction period. Then I register, I take the option of the tenant purchase scheme for 20 years. I will then be paying a monthly installment of about 15,000 shillings post handover, when the unit is handed over to me. If I decide,
for how many years?
For about 20 years. If I decide to rent out that unit, I will be getting a rent of at Garden City rates of roughly, between 15 to 18,000 for the same unit. Meaning, if I get 18,000, I will use 15,000 to pay Mvida, and I will keep 3,000, and I will own the unit.
Yeah.
So that answers the question. Then, what are we doing as institutional developers to increase access to affordable homes? On the supply side, we are availing capital, we are availing expertise, we are availing the skill. On the demand side, not only are we partnering with mortgage providers in the banking sector, but we internally are launching products which address what has been another constraint in housing provision, and that is mortgages. Sure. By giving you a 20-year payment plan that's a hybrid of a tenant purchase scheme.
So you mentioned 2.1 million shillings is the cost of this home. What are we talking about?
It's actually now the price that's going right at the market.
At the market rate.
The market rate, yes.
And this is what, 2-bedroom?
That's a studio.
It's a studio.
Unit, yes.
All right.
What is a studio?
It's 2.1.
A studio is a more, let me put it in layman's terms, it's a more formal bed sitter, in the simplest of terms. In the sense that it's like a one-room unit. The only thing, it's a self-contained. It has the basic amenities.
It is a one-room unit.
One-room unit.
It's like a hotel room.
It's like a hotel room. It's like a serviced hotel room that has a kitchen. It has, of course, the sanitary facilities and a kitchen and your bed space. Yes.
Okay.
But yeah,
and some space where you can.
And some space where you can put. So it's a high quality. It's not just it's not 4 walls.
It's
but it's
big.
a one room. Yeah, it's big.
So we're saying this comes to 2.1 million shillings.
Yes.
So essentially what you're saying is you pay 30%, which is 700,000 bob.
Over a 24-month period.
As the unit is being developed, you're saying pay this amount in whatever. You pay that over 2 years. And then for the next 20 years, you pay 15,000 shillings essentially in rent. But it will be yours after 20 years.
We hand over. You take possession of the unit.
Okay.
Then if you decide to live there, then my rent is also paying for my ownership.
Yeah.
If you decide to rent it out, it means my tenant is actually paying for me. And because more likely than not, the monthly rent will be higher than that installment, I get some change. So literally, for lack of a better word, it's like a free sort of ownership. You are leveraging. And this is how billionaires build wealth. I'm literally using other people's money to acquire the assets.
Yeah.
And it's a practical example of how I can start building a real estate portfolio in an affordable sort of way.
Okay.
Yes.
And obviously this makes commercial sense for the folks who are putting in the buck for this, because there's something that you make from it. Would this be kind of like the off-plan, I want to call it, idea that then became a menace for many people in this? Would you liken it to the same thing where you bought something off plan, it was finished, and then you went ahead and finished? Would you look at it kind of like the same way?
There is an off plan element because you book the unit. You start purchasing the unit either before we start the actual construction or over the construction period. So it's not a ready unit today. It's either at an early stage of construction or under construction.
Yeah.
So it is off plan to that extent. Then what it does, it gives you multiple payment options. I have what we'd call a standard payment option of 2 years, which is the typical off plan where you pay over the construction period.
Yeah.
At construction end, I pay the final installment, the unit is handed over to me, and the title, or the equivalent of a title. We have also availed a 5-year payment plan for somebody who does not want to go the TPS way. The 5-year payment plan just makes it more flexible for more Kenyans to be able to, to acquire units. The 20-year plan is also speaking probably to a beginner investor. Because if you think about it, most people fear real estate because they see the capital requirements or the capital investment needed as beyond their reach.
Yeah.
And what we are doing with this product then is demystifying that and saying with only 14,000 shillings or 15,000 shillings, you can actually start your journey towards not just home ownership, but investment in a real asset, if I may put it like that, because that's what it actually is.
Mvida involved itself in the buying and selling of land?
No. We only buy land to develop.
All right. So if you buy land, then I take the view that you also pay for the cost of these imported materials and everything that is in it. So, and these are then lumped together and it works to the final cost of whatever unit. Now, according to what we've been told with regards to the social housing that the government is proposing, you get land free. All these burdensome taxes that you would ordinarily pay are waived. And so you build. And when you finish building, the government then reimburses you with a small markup which you will make. Do you think that this government proposal, given the attendant benefits that we have been told exist if somebody partners with them in this project, do you think this is something that many developers like yourself would take up?
My view is the general direction is the right direction. Because recall I started by saying on the supply side, one of the major constraints is access to land. The land in the right locations, because this land for affordable housing, the conundrum there is it has to be close to job centers. In the case of Nairobi, for example, it has to be closer to the CBD or closer to what we'd call the other urban nodes. Mm-hmm. And the land there is expensive. So it's affordable housing, but because affordability is also measured by not just the cost of the house, but the overall cost of living there, which includes your daily commute. It has to be close to the CBD or close to these commercial centers. So access to land has been a problem. To the extent that the government does hold, either directly or through its institutions, a lot of land in those locations, it makes sense then for the government to avail that land. Is it free? Depends on your definition of free, because the condition for accessing it is there is a price cap on the units that you deliver to the market. So I'm giving you this land or access to this land, I'm giving you all these incentives, but on condition that then when you develop, the idea is to make your cost of production of the houses or cost of development so low to make sense from the price point that the government has fixed. Because the government has fixed the prices at 55,000 Kenya shillings per square meter, which translates to 3 million shillings.
Does it make sense to developers?
The 55,000?
With all the incentives included.
Let me say it's a challenge.
Which means then it doesn't make sense.
Why? It 50 as a typical cost of developing a house, and it's an apartment high rise.
Yeah.
Is roughly around 60,000, just the actual hard cost. I haven't put in the soft cost in the consultancy there. So
but the cost, as you told us previously, had to do with the cost of the land, the cost of bringing
to finance,
all these things. Yes. Now, the government has removed a huge portion of these burdens. So does that then not relate to reducing the cost of putting up a unit per square meter?
You're right. So let's take the typical example where you say the cost of developing a house is 60,000 shillings. The hard cost, what you call the hard cost, the actual construction, right?
Yes. Yeah.
If you remove VAT on that generally, at the 16 or so percent, it reduces that cost to below 50.
Yes.
Below 50,000. If you remove the cost of land per square meter,
yes,
it means I no longer have a cost of land. The cost of what we call soft cost, the consultancy, the financing, etc., increases that to probably just next to 50,000. So the 55,000 has been a challenge to most developers. And those who have taken that opportunity...
Why is it a challenge? Is it that they're used to higher profit margins? Or
because
is it that they do not...
The most expensive source of capital is equity.
Yes.
If today the bank is lending at on an average 15% all in, the equity investor who is taking the higher risk will always ask for that 15 plus a premium. Meaning the minimum return requirement for an equity investor is 20% plus. For it to make sense, for it to be worthy. Otherwise, if my return is 15%, I can as well take that money and buy a government bond. I don't have to take any risk. So for that reason, because of the equity return ask of investors, the 55K per square meter has been seen as a challenge in some quarters.
Is it something that is not negotiable? Can the investors negotiate the government?
I think the government has rightly been very flexible in that definition. And what it has also allowed in when you are in such a site, there is a component within the site that is at market prices, at least in the completed project.
Yes.
That's what I've seen, which allows the investor to recoup.
Yes.
So in one of the developments, for example, not only a certain category of unit at market prices, there is some commercial space allowed within that development, also selling at market price, which then means the blended return from the affordable and these commercial spaces and the market rate, segment, the blended return sort of meets the developers' return requirements.
Then I still see a challenge. Because if you're still going to put up those houses in the market at about 3 million shillings, then they're still beyond reach for many.
Beyond reach from an ownership perspective.
Even from a rental perspective. Because look, a 2.1 million shilling studio, right? If I am to take the TP, it's 15,000 shillings rent to own for the next 20 years. Now, that means that if we just look with the other math that we talked about, I ought to be earning somewhere above 45,000 shillings for me to live in a 15,000 shillings studio. Now, bring a house at 3 million shillings. Rent is going to be much higher. And it's the same. So at 20,000 shillings for that 3 million shillings, it's still going to be beyond reach for very many people. Are we going to be able to be addressing the challenges that we have?
Okay. In fact, I would broaden the challenge to the supply of housing generally and say the government. So the government has 3 bands. People earning up to 20K, that is social housing.
Yeah.
That the private sector will. The only thing is we can build for the government as a contractor. There is the segment from 20 to 50K. To your point, yes, they cannot afford the 3 million unit, even from a rental perspective. Then you have this other segment called the mortgage gap between 50,000 to 150,000. And you do have a significant segment of workers in that band. Those still under the affordable housing program qualify for affordable houses and they can now afford, we said, up to 30K. Having said that, even above 150,000, we do have a supply issue. Because today if I earn, say, 200K, I probably could comfortably afford a 45K residential unit. The question in the market today is there enough supply of Nyayo estates, for example, for this middle class person to go live in a decent sort of neighborhood and a decent house? Well planned. The answer is no. So if today you earn the 200 or the 250K, and I can afford the 50K or so in rent, I feel I could afford that. Probably I will have to go somewhere on Wayaki all the way to Kikuyu, where I'm seeing units renting up to 55,000 shillings. And there's nothing wrong with the units in themselves, because the units tend to be, they're okay. They are large.
It's everything around it.
It's everything around
access
it.
Road,
the parking ratio, those kind of things. So I can afford to pay 55,000 shillings. But to use the example I used, there is no Nyayo estate currently being developed to give me value for my 55,000 shillings. So we do have a supply issue even in that segment. So I like to think of affordable housing addressing not just these bands defined by the government, but also the next band of what I would call aspirational middle class. This is the accountant working for Spice FM, for example. Where does that accountant live? They qualify to be segmented as an aspirational middle class. Well, I don't pretend to know how much you pay your accountants, but they qualify to be an aspirational middle class.
I am of the view that even this term middle class in this country needs to be
redefine it.
Yeah, most people who qualify to be middle class, in my opinion, are poor people. But anyway,
but they're poor because of all these things. The income is there, but then it's all going into all these other things.
Eric, we have 2 more minutes.
We have a minute.
I'd like you to just opine on this. This much debated finance bill and your industry and how it impacts it.
Okay. So I will answer it from a real estate economics perspective, not the political perspective. A housing fund as a concept is a great concept. It's not new in Kenya. It's already part of the old Housing Act, I think, of 1967. Its operationalization has been pending. We as a country or the industry will never develop unless it's institutionalized through funds. For example, in Mivida, the investment is through a fund, private equity fund. So the concept of a fund is important. It will help with offtake. Offtake means it will be buying units from developers and renting them out affordably. So it will control rents.
Yeah.
It will avail a savings plan. You can save and own a home. It will also be a major driver of tenant purchase schemes. So from a concept development, we need it. The only question then is how is it funded? How it's funded is a political question, and I'm not a politician.
Very nice way of putting it. Samuel, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation. And yes, it's good to have a conversation with people who have got their skin in the game and they're in there and they're doing things, because then from the perspective that you're giving us is a lived perspective. Samuel Kariuki is the CEO of Mivida. Mivida Homes, go visit them or talk to them. Go to mividahomes.com or you can call them 0748 588 488. Ask them about the homes that they're developing off Wayaki Way, at Garden City and elsewhere. Good morning, 9 a.m.
Where fire has engulfed the Mutindo market in Buruburu since 4 a.m. The real cause of the fire is not yet known, but investigations have started. Now, Mutindo market in Buruburu was consumed by a 4 a.m. fire. More details on that in a subsequent news bulletin as investigations on the same continue. Now, Shelter Africa has called on African governments to explore more partnerships that will help realize development of affordable housing to citizens. Shelter Africa Managing Director Thieno Habibhan says housing occupies a central position within the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals, hence the setting up of sustainable partnerships, and which will ensure affordable housing provision is accelerated. According to a research by the Pan-African Housing Financial Center for Excellence, overall housing shortage in Africa is estimated at more than 56 million units, out of which more than 90% are in the affordable housing bracket. Now, women's rights activists have accused Yala MP David Sankong of promoting rape culture just days after a viral video promoting the MP's awesome country lodge in Narok sparked outrage. According to the National Gender and Equality Commission, the MP's description of the lodge as a place to hold women captive and fulfill sexual desires is deeply disturbing and deplorable. According to the National Gender Equality Commission, MP Sankong's statement not only violated the Sexual Offences Act and the Kenyan Constitution of 2010, but also undermined these constitutional principles and perpetuate a culture that violates women's rights. Gatundu Level 5 Hospital now says that its morgue does not have the capacity to store dead bodies. In a letter addressed to Gatundu North and South OCPDs, the hospital's medical superintendent Dr. Jesse Ngugi attributed the overflow at the facility's morgue to a surge in workload, collapse of freezers and delays in disposing unclaimed bodies. Ngugi proceeded to ask the two police chiefs to direct their officers to take corpses to General Cargo Funeral Home and Thika Level 5 Hospital. Members of the civil society are raising concerns over the slow pace of dialogue at the ongoing subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice, better known as SB58. The Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance is accusing the developed economies of employing delay tactics in closing climate financing, loss and damage, as well as the global goal on adaptation. PACG Executive Director Mitheka Mwenda says they are concerned about proposals to adopt a philanthropy model in climate financing. Mwenda says these will technically shift responsibility of climate financing from rich nations to non-state actors, which is a departure from the real deal reached during the Paris Agreement in 2015. And Saudi Arabia has announced an international conference next week to gather aid pledges for war-ravaged Sudan, where the United Nations says more than half the population urgently needs assistance and protection. The pledging conference will be held on June 19th. The official Saudi press agency said this, citing the foreign ministry and adding that it would be jointly led with Qatar, Egypt, Germany, and the European Union, as well as UN agencies. Saudi Arabia and the the United States have been mediating in the 8-week war between Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah el-Burhan and his former deputy Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, known as Hemeti, who leads the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. And Russian forces killed an elderly priest in Chechnya when they shelled the town of Belozerka in southern Ukraine. Andriy Yermak, the head of Ukraine's presidential office, said that the 72-year-old was wounded. Now, 4 residential buildings, a post office, a central square, and some administrative buildings were damaged. Russian President Vladimir Putin visited Russian soldiers wounded in Ukraine in a rare face-to-face meeting with ordinary troops as Kyiv pushed ahead with its counteroffensive against Moscow's forces, and fighting intensified over the weekend. The Russian leader visited the soldiers at the central Vyshevetsky military clinic outside Moscow on Russia Day, a patriotic public holiday. The Kremlin aired images of Putin wearing a dark suit and accompanied by Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu in military attire as he pinned a medal on one of the men who were injured. The 70-year-old Russian leader congratulated the soldiers for what they're doing in Ukraine. This is News. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, 9 o'clock, and we're looking at much better situation this morning. Langata is still probably doing the thing for a while, and also on Limuru Road today, still busy. Coming in from the Thika Superhighway, right around that Pangani underpass, you can go Wangari Maathai Way or you can go into the CBD, really up to you. But that is going to reduce as we go along. So it's just Langata Road and there that we have to contend with. Most parts of the city reduced significantly in terms of traffic. Let's take a look in about half hour or so and see how that opens up as traffic comes to an end this Wednesday. All in all, we want to keep things moving. Talk to us on Spice FM, KE on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
On to the final hour of The Situation Room. Thank you very much for keeping it here. As we continue the conversation, we also continue rewarding you with Sarit Your City.
Indeed. Where do you want to have lunch today? Think about one of these fantastic spots at Sarit Centre between 1 and 2 p.m. today. How about you get on down and visit one of those? Because Sarit is saying we're turning 40, and if you spend 2,040 shillings, come on down to the Sarit Centre, and we then will put you on the magic wheel. You can spin and see what it is that you would be able to win. We on Spice FM are actually saying let's celebrate with Sarit as well and see what we can do. What would you spend 2,040 shillings on? Tell us what that is and we'll give you a hamper at the end of it all, and you could celebrate as Sarit Your City turns 40.
Yes, indeed. Are you, somewhere in a situation and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I need assistance right now and I don't know who to call and I don't even know how to get them here, or I need immediate urgent rescue and I just don't know how to get it done. All you need to do is think about 911 Group, okay? And then you go to your Play Store, App Store and download the 911 Group app. What will happen thereafter, my friend, is that any time you get stuck somewhere and you're thinking, oh my goodness, now what do? You just go to your app and you raise the alarm. From the 911 group app call center, they'll be able to see you with using a GPS locator. They'll know this is exactly where you are. Of course, as you downloaded the app, you registered. They can tell this is Ndu. She's stuck here. Let's send somebody to go and rescue her. Like that. So when you think of those kind of services, just download that app. 911 group app, available on your App Store and Play Store. You know, I'm talking like this and I'm looking. We have a new Director General of the National Intelligence Service. It's being sworn in as we speak at State House, Nairobi. Nuruddin Haji. Like that. Kusema na kutenda. Approved by Parliament yesterday, being sworn in today. By this afternoon, he'll be
in his office.
He'll be Kanyotu. Head of the Debt Management Office in the National Treasury. Karibu to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Asante sana.
City Muga has the day's proverb. This week's proverbs are from Zambia.
Zambia, whose president is called Hakainde Hichilema, and whose vice president is called Mutale Nalumango.
Mutale Nalumango.
Yes.
Right.
There's no James, Peter, Paul, Bana.
It's like Regathe Gachagua.
But I'm sure if you go back into history, you'll find some Gilbert somewhere.
Wow.
Okay. If you told those guys, see that we're having a problem, Mutale Namula, tell them our vice president, our deputy president will be Rigathi Gachagua.
Yes.
They'll be having an issue.
Yes. Well, we'll tell him if you have a problem, we can ask you. We can ask him and he can tell us what his Gilbert name was. Yes. Right. Don't start a fight just because your companion is strong.
Don't start a fight just because your companion is strong. Wahoro.
It reminds me of my brother when I was in high school. I was our firstborn, and I grew tall very quickly. And I was known to be quite a good fighter. There isn't a day I didn't spend, at least in a week, I didn't spend one day with the headmaster, communing with the headmaster.
Why?
She was in a fight.
You were rouser.
Yeah, believe it or not.
Because you were the big boy.
No, the problem was my brother, he would pick fights with other kids.
Because his brother is a big boy.
Isn't so I suppose it's an equivalent in life, and that is the same thing with power, I think. Yeah, just because you have power doesn't mean you should throw it around.
Or because just somebody in power.
Or you know somebody in power. Very apt.
You become that the person who's not good.
And someone says, "Do you know do you know me? Do you know who I know?
Do you know who I know?"
Then there's a problem.
I know people.
I know
friend.
people in this town.
I know people.
That's right.
We're having some serious conversation as a country right now.
Yep.
Because we are discussing next year's financial budget. There is what the executive is proposing. This is what we'd like to spend. Of course, Parliament told them, spend 80 billion shillings more. What's wrong with you? Now our budget is about 3.7 trillion shillings for the next year.
Right.
With the projected revenues of about 2.5. Right? And of course, appropriations made were 2.8. And then there's a deficit to finance.
That's right.
And deficit means?
You're spending more than you're earning.
Okay.
Right.
And it means where are you getting the money?
You have to borrow.
Okay. So you're basically talking about Parliament allowing the government to borrow a certain amount of money in the next financial year. And this has been happening in this country for several years. That is approved limits of borrowing.
Right.
We have been having this discussion here that our debt register now reads at about 9.7 trillion?
Yes, 9.67.
So 9.7 trillion is what we have borrowed. Is it what we owe?
It's the nature of what you owe and how you owe it. Yeah, that's what you owe, but it's also then chopped up into, of course, concessional and non-concessional. And then, of course, with 2014, with us rebasing our budget, we became lower middle income. We joined the big boys, like I said last time, and I think chickens came home to roost thereafter. And so, to that extent, yes, there's a question of the division. 9.7 billion by itself, a trillion by itself. isn't a bad number until you now disaggregate it. And you'll find, of course, the Chinese have $6 billion in there. Then the Eurobonds have another $4 billion there. And then syndicated loans is another, $2.8 billion in there, dollars. So it all adds up. The question then is, what do you do with the different types of debt? And what are the impacts of you entertaining such strange
having
ideas,
all those things,
like defaulting on loans?
Okay, we'll come to defaulting.
Yeah.
First of all, just so that we understand, we know the National Treasury, the CS, there are very many departments within there, and then now we know there's the Debt Management Office. What is that office?
It's charged under the PFM Act to basically manage the debt of this country in a way in accordance with, of course, the constitutional principles. One among which, by the way, which one talks about is intergenerational equity. You should only borrow in such a way that you do not transfer that load to future generations, among other things. The two big words in debt management is prudent and informed decision making. So then the question becomes, if you're going to do that, even the law anticipated, in fact the Constitution anticipated, but then it translated in the law, to give that office a measure of independence. Like, for example, how the IMF and World Bank insist on the independence of the central bank. There's a reason for that, because it's about confidence, it's about being able to speak truth to power, and within that context, then make sure we don't get to where we are right now.
When you say a measure of independence, what do you mean?
Independent from
well, the PFM Act does anticipate that the Public Debt Management Office would be a semi-autonomous entity. In a perfect world, it should be totally autonomous. But of course, for obvious political economic issues, it wouldn't. But the idea of its semi-autonomy should be that it should be able to be removed from the politics of the day. It should be able to have the independence to then make decisions on the best costed debt. What's the most efficient debt for it to pick?
Okay.
Now, if you had stuck with that, what would have happened, even though we rebased our economy in 2014 and became a lower middle-income country, would have said, well, yes, just because you've now been given a gold credit card doesn't mean you go out and spend it. Because when you spend a credit card, you're actually in the open international markets, and those markets are mechanical, and they're mechanically brutal in terms of you keeping your word. You could have stuck with concessional debt, which is World Bank, at 1.2%, with a 10-year grace period over 40 years. Sounds wonderful, but the moment we rebased and became a low middle-income country, we immediately became uneligible for some of those loans. And then the rest is history.
I really want you to explain this thing. This rebasing the economy seems to be the enemy here. When we rebase the economy, what exactly do we do?
Well, I think the United Nations Economic Commission recommends that a country should look at all the sectors that make up your economy every 5 years and say, have we caught a sufficiently large enough basket of the sectors in the economy? Now, what happened in 2014 is we're up, and usually tends to follow or close to also when you do your population census. But in 2014, one of the questions was asked that at the time, one example of a sector that was about to take off was the telecom. The whole notion around the IT and telecommunications becoming a very significant sector in an economy. Now, if you are basing your GDP prior to that, you will have sectors that have evolved since you last did your rebasing. So the question is, you're supposed to then to look at your economy and says, are there sectors that have increased in significance that now need to have their own category? Are there other sectors that need to be removed because they're not as important? Now, of course, for us, when we then brought in, I think the big one, of course, was telecoms and IT, information-based sector of the economy. That's added significantly now to what we should add to the basket of sectors that make up the Kenyan economy. And lo and behold, and then the other thing, of course, is also what they say, pricing of GDP. You must always pick what they call a base year. right? And that's part of what, and that really is to take advantage, to adjust for the effect of inflation over time. Otherwise, you end up with a situation where your numbers look really good, but you're still using prices that are long since non-applicable.
Yeah.
A good example of that is there's a time I know growing up, when you had a shilling actually meant something. You could do something with a shilling. Now, if you have 100 bob, I think that same 100 bob is about the same effect as a shilling back then. So if you were to base your economic analysis on the shilling of then, which has depreciated by 99%, then clearly you skew your economic data. So that's why you have to rebase it and say, okay, in terms of the shilling is based on 2014, let's say. That's adjusted for inflation. So we say if the GDP based on the shilling, this at 2014, this is the size of economy. And on top of that, we've looked at what other sectors that we've not included in the basket.
So you're saying we look at all these sectors, what they amount to, what they bring in, what they cost, and then we recalibrate and we rework our maths. And when you do the arithmetic, the sum total means we are no longer where we were before.
Well, yeah. As a general rule, when you're growing an economy, it's very dynamic, right?
Things will change.
Things will change,
and that's what we call rebasing.
It's basic taking into account several key things change. Yes.
But these are positive changes.
Yes, by and large, the time it can also be negative.
So if it's negative and we rebase.
You can go backwards, yes.
You can rebase backwards.
Yes.
But no one wants to do that.
Why?
Because there's some benefits once you rebase. For example, once you move from what they call highly debt-dependent nations or highly indebted nations, there are certain things that are not available to you. Okay. Key among which is the fact that if you're seen to be a least developed country, you can only ever borrow from the World Bank and IMF. It's almost like in kindergarten, and you cannot graduate from kindergarten.
You have to be told you have to be given instructions on how to behave.
Because basically they're telling you need help, and because it's our money, this is how you're going to do it.
We're going to control how.
When you're rebased, you're basically literally given a credit card. But then when you're given that credit card, you're also told you no longer belong to this concessional debts.
Yeah, you're not getting a food stamp anymore.
No more food stamps. But then that also means that when you get into international international financial markets, they don't. Those guys don't want to know what you want to go do with your money.
Okay.
So everyone aspires to become a place where if you just want to borrow, they ask you, are you good for the money?
Okay.
That's on
and that's it.
Can you repay?
You have a gold credit card.
Yeah.
No, yes, they assume that you're in the club now. And you remember, of course, that when you take even Eurobond and syndicated loans, once you've become a low-middle income country, a key part of even the bond buyers, ones who then buy your bonds, your Eurobonds.
It's because of this.
They know, of course, they have analysts who followed you very, very carefully. You've got dedicated analysts just to you as a country.
Yeah.
And a key thing that people don't realize is a key part of that assessment is actually your opinion of the World Bank and IMF.
Okay, you talk about highly indebted nations. What are the characteristics of a highly indebted nation, so that we can now go to another point?
One, that its expenditure, its revenues are way below way below its what it needs to spend. It tends to be very much primary commodity oriented. It also tends to be one that it has not evolved a sufficient level of sophistication in the economy for it to be able to access other forms of finance or attract other forms of investment. There's a minimum critical scale at which even foreign investors will say, now we want to get into your country. A good example of it is just infrastructure. Part of the reason why we can't run away from infrastructure. If you've been independent for 10 years and you're saying you've got agriculture, if an investor is going to come and put up a 10,000 acre farm to produce XYZ, then you want to be sure that that farm has at a bare minimum passable roads to take the product to market. Now, if you don't have that, then you have to then depend on borrowing or other people's money, but other people whose drive is not necessarily interest. You're still in what you call your development phase. And so then you're tied to the likes of the World Bank and IMF.
Is Kenya a highly indebted nation?
Technically, as a percentage of its total GDP, no, it's not.
Okay.
And also the rebase also means that there's a signal we've sent to international markets that we are sufficiently sophisticated. And we have a track record, by the way, and the track record is everything, which is that conversation about
tunaweza lipa.
Tutafika huko. Tunaweza lipa.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to go back to the question that Eric asked. Does Kenya owe, from the debt register that we see, okay, many would argue that the one that we see today is not up to date, all right? But does Kenya actually owe what it says it does?
The short answer is yes, but of course it's more nuanced than that. And that is because a certain level of a certain level of opaqueness, which is, I think, one of the underlying conversations in the public square, means that we don't know the extent of the conditions. For example, you say like 9.7 trillion.
Yeah.
If you see half of it, it's about 4.5 is commercial.
Yeah.
Now, if of that, half of that, if 6 billion of it has to do with a bilateral loan, which is actually supposed to be cheaper and it's between two countries. But the Chinese bilateral loan has the distinction of being not quite like other bilateral loans in that it's fairly commercial and it's tied to particular projects. So in that context, then that's why I say the answer is nuanced in that the lack of being able to know that detail. If you're prudent, you'd say then you better err on the side of saying yes, it has a huge impact on our sustainability.
So it is possible, or rather what we're saying, it is not possible to say that you have this amount of debt and that money then that is being paid as debt is going somewhere else. That situation is not possible.
It's very unlikely. I'll tell you why. One is because there's a condition precedent for any loan across the board, especially bilateral, but especially commercial, is that you commit rightward, and you must actually commit it constitutionally in paying them first, even before you pay the public servants. So then in itself, the very interest of your creditors makes sure that a lot of that is on board. I think it's part of the reason why the Chinese conversation is so interesting, because I think for the first time we've got to a situation where there is some level of lack of sufficient transparency to know exactly what the terms and conditions of that were. And to me, the conversation really about debt is really not so much about debt, but about the mechanisms we have for holding leadership accountable, but also having an independence in the way that process is executed.
So then why wouldn't a debt register then be made public and up to date? Why would it be hidden somewhere in the dusty corners of a department where you used to sit? Why would that happen?
Oh, look, back in the day, I'm sure there were a lot of issues around efficiency of record keeping. There's a lot of probably not always a very close monitoring of what debts have been paid off, what are still owing. But I think the conversation around the debt register actually came alive around when the Chinese debt came into the picture, because the amounts were so large. But also, ironically, it's because also Chinese debt came with a literal transformation of our landscape. So, it's a chicken and egg situation. We could see up before Chinese debt. Remember, we would see debt, but we were almost acclimatized to not necessarily seeing what it's doing.
Where the money was going.
Yeah. So to be fair, Chinese debt also came with a literal transformation of a landscape. But then we ask, this is wonderful. So what are the conditions? And then we realize it's part of maybe a Chinese state policy that these are very tied, very closely guarded financial arrangements with the host government. And I think a lot of our beef is around that particular
issue.
question.
You have said, and it's there, that the first charge of the consolidated fund is pay debt. Even before you pay a salary, before you pay rent, before you pay power, pay debt. Okay? That means that constitutionally, PFM Act and all other laws and regulations completely understand that the first thing that will do is money will be going to pay debt.
Right.
And there's a schedule of what debt is to be paid at what time.
That's correct.
Sindio?
Yep.
So, who's in charge of that? Who signs off that, okay, so this month we are paying Ndu, bring the check, I've signed.
Oh, no, that's a function of the PDM, or the Public Debt Management Office.
So the people in charge of the Public Debt Management Office are the ones who basically...
Well, we have the schedule. They have the schedule of doing
You have the
that.
schedule,
Yeah.
and you have now the repayments. Is it possible for money to be paid out of the consolidated fund to go to pay debt in quotes and not end up going to pay debt?
Well, technically, anything is possible. I mean, you can't rule that out. Remember that what makes it very watertight is the fact that you have a creditor on the other end
who's waiting for them,
who's probably committed more resources on monitoring you than you yourself are keeping for yourself. So there's that self-interest sort of self-balances in situations like that. So it's very unlikely, unless it's deliberate.
Why I'm asking that is because we had Senator Okiya Omtata here, and he said he's going to court. Among the things that he wants to raise is, if you look at how much we have borrowed as a country between 2013 and 2022,
yes.
If you look at how much we have been repaying as a country between 2013 and 2022, there should be a difference. This is the amount of money you borrowed. You bought a car, you borrowed 2.5 million shillings from the bank. You have been making monthly repayments. Your loan can't still be the same, surely.
Yeah.
And that's the question he's asking. Why is our loan still 9.8 trillion shillings and yet every year we are repaying?
Before you even
Or did we take these loans which never move? You pay and just remains the same.
It's giving money for free.
You know, I can see where he's coming from. I mean, one, of course, is a question of pricing that debt in terms of, if he's talking dollars to dollars, then you could make a case for, why is it not dropping? But also the nature of debt is a bit different in that your stock of debt doesn't drop because you're paying every month, because you're paying interest, right? Like the Eurobond.
Okay.
The Eurobond is like any other debt you take in a bank.
Yes.
You pay interest, you pay interest, you pay interest. Then you have what you call a bullet
First
payment.
installment is 98% interest.
Well, actually, it's a bit different. I say it's for mortgage.
98 bob interest, 2 bob principal.
But actually, in most of like Eurobond debt and even syndicated debt tends to be quite different in that you say you commit to a series of payments, annuities of interest, right? At the end of which you return the money you borrowed, right? So if I borrowed $2 billion in Eurobond, that's how Eurobond works. You say we've agreed on 5.8%. So, and that's payable every 6 months, right? Okay. It's payable. That's annual interest is payable every 6 months or whatever you agree.
Okay.
So every 6 months you're paying the interest component. Then you have the bullet payment at the end. And what you call a bullet payment is that the $2 billion you borrowed, you have to then return it.
So you now return.
So it's like employing your money to do work for you. So hopefully in the time that you borrowed the $2 billion, you put it to work so that it's generating a revenue stream to meet your interests, but also to grow your asset base so that you're returning it to
You'll
10 years from now.
At least like a B.
So all this money we are paying, we're just paying interest.
For like the Eurobonds and syndicated loans.
Syndicated loans.
Yeah.
So, but then when we say that we owe 9.8 trillion shillings, is that just the principal we've borrowed? Is that what we talk about?
Yes, that's a stock. Now,
this 9.8 trillion does not talk about the interest.
Yeah, so that's the question. In fact, for investors, the bigger question is not normally your stock of debt. It's when they look at your stock of debt, they look at your debt servicing, which is where you're paying the interest. And they look at your servicing of that debt and they say, okay, the only way you can finance, especially if it's in dollars, the only way you can finance your interest is we want to know the sources of your exchange and foreign exchange. So they say, okay, first thing, you export.
Yeah.
So they ask, so what is your total export income relative to your debt servicing? A very important performance metric.
Okay.
Another question they ask is, okay, what are the sources? Okay, if you are like Kenya, you've got a big diaspora now. So the diaspora
is a source.
Is a source. They say, okay, they factor that in. Convincing them of that revenue stream in terms of once you're growing your export base, you have other sources like diaspora, then they can say the decision, okay, in the basis of that, I think there's room here to lend you X amount. But the analysts sitting in Washington or Beijing, they are dedicated analysts who want to look at Kenya. Especially, like, you can bet for...
There's a Kenya desk.
There's a Kenya desk in each of them, as for every other country.
Yeah.
And those ones then monitor to make sure. So that's the questions around, when we started having the debate about the balance of payments, balance of trade conversations. There are people who are very, very interested because it speaks to that sustainability of paying that interest.
Let's take a break. Hey, some good lessons we're learning this morning. 25 minutes to 10. Wohorondoho is a former boss. What were you? Director General of the National Debt Management Office at the National Treasury. He's here this morning. We're talking about our debt and the repayments, just trying to contextualize the conversation that we've been having with Okiya Omtata, with Jimmy Wanjege, with who else? Everybody else who's been here and who's been talking about debt and numbers. 25 to 10. We'll be back shortly. Wahoro, you've filled out your tax returns. Of course, for you now, these things are it's the basics. Everybody, remember, you've got to fill out your tax returns by the end of this month because that's the requirement. It's a legal requirement, and KRA is reminding you, please do so. Just go to itax.kra.go.ke.
It is time for you to take your farming business to the next level, no matter how big or small your farming venture is. Agritech Africa and GrainTech Africa are inviting you to come and learn the latest technologies in agriculture, dairy, livestock, poultry, and grain farming. Over 150 exhibitors from all over the world will be at the KICC Nairobi from June 15th to 17th to show you how agriculture is being done globally. Entry is free. You cannot afford to miss this. It's that time again when we get to gather around and marvel at the great engineering, raw power, finesse, and share in our round motor love for motoring at the annual Digger Motor Show 2023. From car lovers, bike enthusiasts, spare part dealers, insurance, as well as asset financiers and more, this year's Digger Motor Show will be one for the books. We're talking a whole 4-day event from Thursday 20th to Sunday 23rd at KICC Grounds, Nairobi, where we will have something for everyone, so you better not miss out. Get the family, bring your friends, and share in the joys that will give you lasting memories and an experience you're bound to not forget. For more information or participation, contact Caroline on 0723 803601 or email sinyandiaka@standardmedia.co.ke. Digger Motor Show 2023 is brought to you by Standard Group and Digger Motors and is powered by Spice FM.
Yay, Mom! This! Oh, look! It's so beautiful! Mom, can I pick one?
Yes. Pick. We need to win the car.
In fact, we need to enjoy free Wi-Fi and the convenience of the Sarid prepaid parking card.
We'll see highs of 25 today and lows of 15. Highs will go to 25 in Nakuru, where it's cloudy at 17. Mostly cloudy at 16 in Nyeri, highs of 24. And we'll see highs of 22 in a mostly sunny Eldoret at 15. It's 23 and sunny in Mombasa, highs of 30 and highs of 30 as well in a sunny Malindi. At 21, Kisumu is mostly cloudy, highs of 27, and 23 will be the high in mostly sunny Kakamega. 19 and cloudy in Kampala, and at 25 is partly sunny, going to highs of 29 in Dar es Salaam. 6 and sunny in Johannesburg, highs of 18, and we'll see highs of 30 in a partly cloudy Lagos. 23 and cloudy in Kinshasa, highs of 30. And at 32, Beijing is sunny. It will go to highs of 35 today, going into evening Wednesday already. And at 13 is partly sunny in Paris, 12 and sunny in London. At 20 and mostly clear still Tuesday night in New York, coming into Wednesday. We'll see highs of 23 and lows of 16.
Bro, the game's about to start. Let's go. Yeah. But just give me a minute, man. Malize. What's up? Who are you chatting with? I'm just filing my returns, then we bounce. Because I hope you remember the deadline is June 30th. The game will start, banner. Where? It doesn't take time. And yep, I'm done. That was fast. Where? Show me how you've done yours, because I don't want to pay any penalty. Just log into itax.kra.go.ke and file your returns. And if you don't know how to, just go to KRA's YouTube page and watch a tutorial. It's that easy. Allah, filing returns is easier than cooking. Easy peasy, say.
Kenya Revenue Authority reminds all PIN holders to file their 2022 tax returns on or before 30th of June 2023. For assistance, call 0711 099 999 or email callcenter@kra.go.ke. You can also visit any of the KRA service centers or any Huduma center countrywide. Kenya Revenue Authority. Tulipe ushuru, tujitegemee. When the engine revs, will you be ready to get all that petrol head enthusiasm at this year's annual Digger Motor Show? Well, you better belt up and make your way to KICC from the 20th to the 23rd of July 2023 for a wholesome 4-day event. Come and join car lovers, bike enthusiasts, spare part dealers, insurance as well as asset financiers and more for what will be an unforgettable experience by far. We are going all out to make it a great show for you and the whole family with something for everyone. So, you better not miss out. For more information or participation, contact Caroline on 0723803601 or email cnyandiaka@standardmedia.co.ke. Digger Motor Show 2023 is brought to you by Standard Group and Digger Motors and is powered by Spice.
This is the end of traffic hour this morning. Not looking too bad through most of the city. In and outbound Nairobi is also looking really good. Langata Road, where we had an issue before, that has more or less come to an end as you come to Airdrome and then out towards Uhuru Highway. It's also looking good as you approach the Eastern Bypass and you're looking at North Airport Road into Outer Ring. That's also fine. I think traffic hour is over now. Through the morning, let's talk Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Business News with Spice FM.
I'm Dennis Aseto. PKF Kenya wants some sections of the Finance Bill 2023 amended, arguing they will burden Kenyans. The firm says that some clauses in the bill should be shot down completely as their passage will worsen the high cost of living. The firm observes that the tax burden falls heavily on employees and civil servants who are often subjected to tax audits. Insurance company Britam has appointed Barack Obatsa as the new Chief Executive Officer of Britam Asset Managers. Previously, Obatsa served at ICEA Lion Limited as Chief Investment Officer. He also worked at the Africa Alliance Bank as its regional CIO. Britam will tap into his investment management experience in equities and fixed income to explore alternatives like private equity, infrastructure and real estate classes. Emirates customers will now be able to fly to more African countries after signing an agreement with Kenya Airways. Flyers will access 28 destinations on the KQ network using Nairobi, including Nampula, Bangui, Bujumbura, Kigali, Dzaoudzi, Lubumbashi, Kinshasa, Kilimanjaro, Juba and Zanzibar, among other African countries. Likewise, Emirates passengers traveling via Dubai can also book a single ticket itinerary from or to Mombasa. Transport operators are increasingly adopting modern technologies to offer ticketing efficiencies and provide comfort to commuters across the country. The new solutions available in the market enable bus operators to seamlessly manage bookings, payments and passenger information, resulting in streamlined operations and improved profitability. Players in the sector say the wider penetration of internet and smartphones in the country is making it easier for developers to come up with e-ticketing solutions targeting the mass market, knocking down barriers previously associated with physical appearance by commuters at bus stations to book a ticket. For Spice Business, I'm Dennis Aseto.
Spice FM Business. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
15 minutes left for this conversation with Wohoro Ndoho, former Director General of the National Debt Management Office in the National Treasury, understanding debt management, debt repayments, in light of the conversations that have been happening around the country now about debt. So, is it possible, Wohoro, that Kenya at some point signed for a debt, has gone to borrow? Okay, of course, the concessionary multilateral loans and bilateral, those ones, it's a bit, but the commercial loan, there's a possibility. Is there a possibility? Gone, said you've borrowed the money, received money from lenders, money is supposed to come and enter into the system for development projects, and then money disappears before hitting said development.
Technically speaking, if it's going to be any mischief, it will happen once it's in our system. But as I said, because it's a commercial
By
loan,
being in our system, what does that mean?
it means, I'll give you an example. Every country on earth has, and that's changing, of course, every country on earth tends to have an account with the Federal Reserve, especially New York. I know the Federal Reserve is seven basically regional reserves that form the Federal Reserve. And so, as a general rule...
Why does every country in the world have an account with them?
That's a conversation, a whole conversation for another day. Suffice it to say, when they then raise... part of the reason is also a confidence issue, and that's a structure of international finance.
Okay.
So when you launch your Eurobond, and the investors say, yes, we're going to buy a bond, then they ask, where do we deposit the money? Now, they could deposit the money into Kenya's bank account with Chase Manhattan. But, it's a sovereign country, right? So, as a general practice, then they say that you can deposit these funds with the Federal Reserve or for your credit.
Okay.
Now, the moment it enters the Federal Reserve account for Kenya then chooses what to do with it. It can then... Actually, by law, it's supposed to then transfer it immediately to the consolidated fund. So that's a clear chain of custody. So
that is, in theory, what's supposed to happen.
No. That's how it happens. You don't have a choice because remember your lenders in the first instance want to see. They don't think you've gone and put it.
There's some accountability there.
$2 billion, and you've gone and put it into a Karomaindo account somewhere. that chain must be clear. So once it gets in there, then you have signed the document, you now owe that money. Now, the moment you do that, then the prerogative of the National Treasury is to move those funds, in whole or in part, into the consolidated fund. And even that transfer is also mandated by law. So you cannot move it from that Federal Reserve account to Mr. Wohoro's personal US account. It has to come, that chain of custody must come here. But of course, as famous politicians once said, money is fungible. The moment it enters the pot, then it just becomes part of the general budget support.
Money.
Can I ask, who is responsible for oversight? That when this money comes in, there must be somebody. There must be an office, there must be a department who says, okay, this is this money coming in, because if we can dumb it down, if we can simplify it so we can understand exactly what's happening here. When money comes in, who's responsible to say, okay, this is Eurobond. This is what it's supposed to be. This is what it is meant for. Is it following the chain that it is meant to, and if it doesn't, I mean, apart from the Auditor General's one, after all has been said and done, jumps up and says, hold on a minute, this was supposed to be for this, it didn't happen. But who looks at this thing, essentially, and says, hold on, guys, you said this money was supposed to be for this, it is not going there.
I mean, that's always the responsibility of the economic manager of the country, which is the National Treasury.
Okay.
And within the National Treasury, the specialist department that looks to the detail of how that is done is the PDMO. So the question then really, and sometimes I feel like it sort of gets distracted. That chain of custody is easy to prove. But the question then becomes that once it arrives into the consolidated fund, it becomes general budget support. So what I need to make clear is that once it enters that pot called the consolidated fund, the division between what it was purposed for and what happens happens. The next time you see how it's then split up is in fact in terms of where the monies are allocated, and you trace where the monies are allocated.
So you're saying until it has been spent,
it
sits there. But until it has been spent is when you can now come back and say, okay, divvied up, it went here, it was supposed to go here. So before that, what we're saying is that anybody can do anything inside here, and we will not be able to ask questions until after the fact.
For it to be withdrawn from that fund, there's a
Somebody
control
says,
of budget.
okay, yeah.
Which is part of it. And I think you're reinforcing my point. Part of the reason why our constitution was crafted the way it was to create a very distinct points in that chain of custody. From the moment the money is raised in the US, it arrives here, and any money leaving the consolidated fund, that's where you have the PFM. Now, the trick here is to be able to do your analysis to ask the question, okay, where is the money coming? I'm not talking necessarily the budget. How is the money being dispersed from the consolidated fund? So there's a little trick, but a little a really interesting question I'd put to analysts. And that is, forget the budget. If you went and looked at how actual outgoings, how actual money leaves and spent, you could have a very interesting analysis. For example, at the end of every year, okay, the government budgeting is cash. Yes. It's cash based. It's not accrual, which basically means you spend what you collect. So you can't spend more than what you've collected, right? So if at the end of every year you said how much came in, how much left out, technically speaking, you can't really have a deficit.
It should balance.
It should balance.
Yes.
Now, what then? When you then compare that year on year, going back 10 years, and then trace that against our budgets, which is your spending plan, that could be a very interesting conversation, because you will see there's a bit of a difference, and that's because when the government is spending with third parties, the commitments are multi-year, so there's an element of accrual in there, but that's only in the budgeting. In the spending, you can then go year by year and say how much has been spent on every specific item on the budget, and ignoring the actual budget, you compare then the actuals against the budget. That difference there could tell, I think, can create a lot of confusion, which is part of the reason why when you see like our budget right now, it's a 3.4, is it 3?
The current year?
Yeah.
The one that we are finishing.
Yeah, the trillion, yeah.
Right now is a 3.2.
3.2. There was 3.2 against 2.4. So it's almost like a trillion difference there.
Yeah.
That also accommodates past commitments that are going to fall due, even as you're adding to those our present commitments. But technically, at the end of the financial year, you can only spend what you've collected. And that's where now the likes of even bilateral lending, for example, a lot of bilateral lending is disbursed as the project needs it. So it's not like it's given lump sum, and then you have to hold it somewhere until you're ready to use it.
Let's come to the question that's a big one now on debt. So there have been several suggestions. Number one, can we open the books, put all the papers on this table, and audit this debt. Look at the amounts approved by Parliament. Look at the actual amounts borrowed. Look at where the money went. Trace it. This money was going to a certain dam called Thwake Dam. This is it. These are the invoices. This is the money where it went. Can we do that? If we do that and we find that there's some discrepancy, what do we do with it? One. Two, we are now, running against this clock. Oh my goodness, we are raising, we said we are hoping to raise 250 shillings next year. Out of that 250, 160 is going towards paying debt. We are basically left with no money for no wiggle room. What do we do about that? Can we default? Can we just call her and say, you know what, people?
We don't have.
We declare bankruptcy.
Buy and buy.
Okay. Yes, the second one just censorship and damn fine. But to your first question, we do that every year in the budget conversation. Now, the difference might be in saying if this is a national conversation at this point in time. For example, even in fact, I would have said in the first 100 days, this government could easily have declared a national emergency, called a national economic forum, and had us have this debate openly before the finance bill was passed. Being that as it may, that decision was made. The only other way I think you can do that, I think, unless you always go back to the law, you cannot do it outside the law. It is entirely possible that the oversight role of Parliament could say, we will introduce a bill to get to the bottom of this and do exactly that. And that bill will be very specific.
A forensic audit of our debt.
So now the big elephant in the room in these conversations is that the separation of powers is not. We've seen that the separation of powers is weak, so that one arm of government can dictate to another. That's a separate conversation. But to your first question, yes, you can do that. My view is that it should happen within the context, not just a PFM, but maybe an even more enabling special legislation that will say this is such a big issue that we, as the custodians of the people's sovereignty in Parliament, want to do this. Okay. So to me, I think there's a solution that. Now, to the question of default, no, you cannot default.
Why not?
I'll give you 4 reasons. In fact, I have more here. First and foremost, the reputational damage. Once you're known to be unreliable, you forget this happens even in life. When you skip a couple of people paying them, then what spreads about you're a bad guy. Then a day comes when you have a real emergency. And at that point, you realize just how much of lack of reputational capital is critical to you. So that's the first thing. Second thing, with a lot of Eurobond contracts and syndicated loans, they will tend to have a clause that says this. If you make any moves to look like you are trying to reach an accommodation with other creditors, have a much like debt relief. Something innocuous says, just extend a little loan. Can you adjust our current? Yes, I know we signed that. Can we sort of make some adjustments? In an Eurobond in the international market, there tends to be a clause that says, even if you make a move like that, we as your bondholders can deem that to be a technical default. So what does that mean? You do not want to do that unless you are someone like the World Bank, the IMF, sort of escorting you along. Because if your Eurobond holders decide that you've committed a technical default, then it triggers an immediate right to recall. Now, remember the bullet payment we talked about? Yes.
They can say, instead of waiting for this now, we want it now.
We want it now. But not just them. Everyone else who holds a bond, because it's a domino effect. Everyone else who holds your Eurobond will say,
I want my money today.
I want my money today. So you cannot default because of that. That's another reason you can't default.
Yeah, but it's not. Even if you remove our trousers and whip us.
I mean, what are you going to do?
There's no money.
There's no money. There's no money.
We're truthful
what are you
people.
going to do?
Now, yeah, but I'm giving you reasons why you don't want to do that. Secondly, if you then say, okay, let's say we have no money, you declare default, you are now a debtor, a pariah, right, internationally. Countries have been known for Kenya Airways flies into London, the aeroplane is impounded there. Every embassy you own on this planet,
they attach
everybody will catch it. Whatever assets you have out there, and it cannot touch. And there's nothing to stop them, in my view, from touching even your citizens' assets. Now, they won't do that. I mean, that would create a whole issue.
International issue, yeah.
But the reputation of a country then goes to the dogs, and any asset that you as a sovereign country own out there.
So no
becomes
default.
fair game.
Let's avoid defaulting. What can we do?
What you do is that you can renegotiate. Now, the only way you can renegotiate is the first place you must pass in that conversation, in that journey, is the likes of the IMF and World Bank. Which then you suck right back. You thought you were independent. You find yourself back. You've come back.
With your tail between your legs.
Yeah, well, maybe wiser for it.
So we're not really rebasing. We're really not going back to
So if we do that,
I think we've had
with the backing then of the Bretton Woods, even these other bondholders would be lenient.
But you see, remember, that's always voluntary, because even if for example, you could reach an accommodation with some of the Eurobond, because they can see, well, Kenya is a strategic. I mean, that's the flip side of this is Kenya is a strategic country in Africa. If we let it default, the signal it sends across the continent could be disastrous for even them as investors. So it's a bit of
so we have
competitive. There's some leverage there, but not as much as we think. But you think of every other loan if you denominated in dollars. They all call in, they all stop burning us. Think about pension funds. These Eurobonds tend to be bought by pension funds of those other countries. Now, the political fallout of those other countries, those governments then saying Kenya's defaulted on borrowing this money.
And that's why we can't pay our pensioners.
Yes, that's right. So to me, that's a very sophisticated. That's part of the problem with it's more nuanced than that. So the question is not default; it's a question of how you reach an accommodation.
It's how you work around it.
That's right.
Uhuru, thank you very much. Lakini Uhuru hatuna pesa. And uambie. Uhuru Ndoho is former Director General of the National Debt Management Office. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation. Have a lovely day. It's 10 a.m. Time for the news with Dennis.
That I shall be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Constitution and Republic of Kenya. That I will at all times and to the best of my ability obey, protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya and all other laws of the Republic. That I will protect and uphold the sovereignty, integrity, and dignity of the people of the Republic of Kenya. That I will diligently serve the people of the Republic of Kenya without fear, favor, bias, affection, or ill will. So help me God.
The National Assembly approved his nomination yesterday following a report tabled by the House Defence Intelligence and Foreign Affairs Committee that gave a nod for his approval following his vetting. In the report, the Nelson Koech-led committee exceeded confidence that Haji is suitable to take the helm of the National Intelligence Service following his vast experience and capabilities. The legislators urged him to ensure that he safeguards the lives and properties of Kenya.